Call our public consultation session to order, and I'll have the corporate officer read the notice aloud, please.
Good morning. This public consultation is being held to respond to comments received from anyone that may be affected by the proposed amendments to the city's official community plan bylaw. OCP Amendment Bylaw number 4418 proposes to redesignate the property located at 1225 113th Avenue from institutional to medium-density residential and include the subject property into the multifamily development permit area. And there was one written response received from Peace River Regional District in favor of the proposed amendment.
Thank you. And we do have one letter that's the letter from Cole Casey from the RD.
Yes.
And do we need to have a motion to receive that?
No.
Thank you. So for the first time, we'll call for any comments from anyone. And for a second time, any comments? And for a third time, any comments? Thank you. We'll close that public consultation session. And now we have a public hearing on the same matter. Brenda?
Thank you. This public hearing is being held to hear from anyone that may be affected by the proposed amendments to both the city's OCP and zoning bylaws regarding the property located at 1225 113th Avenue. OCP Amendment Bylaw number 4418 seeks to change the land use designation from institutional to medium-density residential and include the subject property into the multifamily development permit area. And Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4419 seeks to change the zoning from P1 to RM1, as well as allowing the rooming house use on the subject property. And the same written response was received.
Thank you. And for folks that are watching, this is to deal with the home purchased by the South Peace Health Society, the Both Roads House, as a patient accommodation house at the address 1225 113th Avenue. For a first time then, we'll call for any comments. Questions? And for a second time, any comments?
Pretty quiet crowd.
And for a third time, any comments? Thank you. Then we'll close the public hearing. And we'll call our regular meeting of City Council to order. Our first item this morning under our delegations, 2.1, we have Angie Duckin from the Northern Brain Injury Association in attendance regarding a proclamation for Brain Injury Awareness Month. Good morning. Would you like to come up and I'll read the proclamation, Angie, and we'll get that, and then you can have the delegation table. And
I really didn't plan to say anything, so.
Well, no, you don't have to.
Oh, good.
Whereas everything we as humans know, see, think, speak, feel, do, or experience is facilitated by the brain. And whereas any injury to the brain permanently affects our ability to know, see, think, speak, feel, act, and experience life. And whereas 60 British Columbians each day, 22,000 each year experience a brain injury, survivors can face a life of social isolation, misunderstanding, poverty, and struggles with self-concept. And whereas the prevention of injury to the brain, support of survivors, and our community understanding of acquired brain injuries is of paramount importance. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim June 2019 as Acquired Brain Injury Awareness Month in Dawson Creek. Angie, thanks so much for coming in this morning and raising this important topic. I think it's until you experience it, until you have family, friends, someone that you know close to you that experiences a closed head injury of any sort, you realize the significance of what can impact their life and the lives around them. And so we really appreciate you coming in this morning to raise this important topic. And absolutely, if you'd like to say a few words, it's yours.
Maybe I will say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that part of my job is prevention, education, and also support of people with brain injuries. In the past year, my caseload has doubled in people that I see in only the Dawson Creek area. I also see people in Tumbler Ridge, Chetwynd, and Fort St. John. I travel twice a month to Fort St. John and try to do the best I can with people with my time up there as well. It's actually where I'm headed right after I finish here. I also do bike rodeos. I have one bike rodeo in Tumbler Ridge this week, and I have another one at Frank Ross next Monday, so I'm praying for good weather for that. And yeah, just the prevention aspect, making sure kids wear helmets. It doesn't necessarily prevent a brain injury, but it can help it not be catastrophic. So just being aware of that and what to do in case of a concussion. I have a lot of people say their kids got concussions and they didn't know what to do. So we have the information for that as well. So we're doing a brain injury awareness campaign at the end of the month where we encourage kids to decorate their helmets and take pictures of it and put it up on our website. And then we'll pick a winner. And yeah, the kids have a chance to win. We had one last year who won, I think, $70. So encouraging people to join just to get the prevention aspect out there. So, and the awareness, of course.
Thank you so much. Angie, is there a place where people can contact you if they are looking for information or?
Yes, I have an office in Dawson Creek in the Noodle Hut complex.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, just come by the office or give me a call. My information is all online, and
Perfect. And perhaps we'll get that information and we'll post it on our social media and our website to help give
Wonderful.
that information. Thank
That
you
would be
so much
great.
for coming in today.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 2.2, we have Kellen Robley from the Dawson Creek Dog Park Committee in attendance regarding a temporary dog park proposal. Good morning. So it's my pleasure to welcome Kellen to council today. I've met with Kellen a number of times over the Dawson Creek Dog Park proposal, and Councillor Kemp has taken the lead in working with the committee. And so, Kellen, welcome. It's good to have you here today.
Thank you. So yeah, today I'm proposing a temporary dog park, which I think would be a good idea because right now we'd like a dog park at the SPCA, and they've agreed to have the new one there. They have about 5 acres available, but that means that we have to fence those 5 acres, and that's going to take a little while, perhaps, depending on what we'll get for grants. So in the meanwhile, I'd like to put a temporary dog park in at one of the decommissioned ball diamonds. We have a couple options. So we have the one at Barbary, which is my first option on 15th Street. And then we have Newbie and as well as Chamberlain Nature Park. So those are the ones that we're looking at. I've got a group of people together who would like to be on a committee. We had that one big public meeting there, and then we also had a little one where people came to look at the one at Barbary Park and see what would need to be done if we were to use a ballpark. The 115th Street has very little that needs to be done other than maybe adding in some poo bag dispensers and garbage bins. The committee has also agreed to be responsible for kind of like a poop patrol, make sure that everybody's picking up their own feces and taking away the garbage. We think that having a temporary dog park will reduce the amount of people using the sports fields and leaving behind dog feces, and kind of there's been a bit of conflict there. The only conflict that we have with using the Barbary one publicly right now is some people do use it for the ballpark, but it's not as like with official ball games, and then also disc frisbee players store their gear there, which I would have no problem continuing if that works out for them. Yeah, temporary dog park would be a good place for the dog community to get together, and it would not cost the city anything because we would like to do it all through fundraising. We partnered with Pet Value. I met with the manager, Miranda, there. She's a new manager, and she'd like to really get a lot of fundraising through the store there. So that's really great. Plus we have the SPCA on board for the bigger picture. We have a few ideas already in the works for fundraising, and we think that the only thing would be lawn mowing, we think, which would be about $60 a month, which I think could easily be covered with fundraising. Also, grants or sponsorships would be from like community donations. We think that people would step up for that. We have rules and regulations already in place. So poop and scoop is mandatory. Dogs must be kept on leash until inside the gated area. Dogs must be vaccinated and licensed and must have dog tags on them when inside the park. Dogs will be removed if the female is in heat, sick, or aggressive. No more than 3 dogs may be brought into an off-leash dog area by one person at the same time. Children under 12 years of age must be supervised by any adults while inside the off-leash dog area. Puppies under 4 months old are not permitted just for vaccination reasons. Any food or other than small training treats wouldn't be allowed. Any holes dug must be filled before leaving, and hours of operations would be sunset to sunrise, or sunrise to sunset, sorry. And yeah, the rules would be kind of hard to enforce in the dog park, and that's kind of something that we need to work on figuring out. I was thinking maybe we could leave a number there, so if anybody's causing a problem, we could address it. But yeah, in conclusion, a temporary dog park will be no cost to the city. It will be 100% fundraised through the community. There is already a dedicated group of people who want to be on the committee to organize events, fundraising, development, maintenance, and public relations. It is high in demand. 150 people are on the Facebook group, and then there's also a committee group where we can communicate without having to do the meetings, but the meetings will be, they've agreed to once a month, or any special side meetings can also be talked about. It would be a good place for the dog community to come together and to socialize and exercise their dogs. And it would reduce the amount of off-leash dogs in the parks and recreation area, which I think is a big deal for everybody else. Just a good, inclusive addition to the community. I went through that really fast.
No, you did a great job. You did
But
a
if you
great
have any
job.
questions.
Questions for council? Councillor Javetka.
Yes.
Do you have more information on the Chamberlain Nature Park site?
Well, we met with Parks and Rec, and they kind of just gave us a list of parks that we could use. So with the Chamberlain Nature Park, I don't think there is a ballpark there, is there? So I think that would require us to put up fencing. But if that were the one that we did end up choosing, and we ended up putting up fencing there, then we could end up using that fencing when we take down the temporary park and put it in the new park to kind of reduce that fencing cost. That's just what I was thinking anyways, if we did end up having to put up any fencing. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Parslow.
Yes, this is overdue. It's good to see it come into fruition. But have you considered as one of your rules the muzzling of dogs? I know that it's in a couple of the lower mainland ones, they've had issues with some pretty mean dogs, right? So
Yeah.
they've gone to muzzling. Have you thought about that?
Well, any dogs that show aggression just won't really be allowed in. And aggression just means like towards humans or other dogs constantly starting fights. Dogs obviously get in squabbles, but with the muzzling, I think that maybe if your dog is aggressive and you still want to bring it, it has to have a muzzle on. But I think for the most part, we're just going to try and not let those dogs that are not socialized well with other dogs in.
I'm wondering how you're going to do that.
Right? That's something that we're...
Firm talk with them.
Yeah, I'm just... well, I think that it's going to have to be kind of a community thing where we're just going to have to respect the park, and if it doesn't get respected, then it won't happen kind of thing. So if there's an issue, there's going to be a number to call, and yeah, we'll try our best to get that sorted out. But I don't think that we'll have a problem with people who keep bringing their dogs in despite fighting. If your dog's starting fights, you're probably not going to want to bring it to where it's going to be fighting other dogs or people.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
Somebody bites my tucker, they're going to get bitten.
Yeah, exactly.
Councillor Leckstrom and then Councillor Javetka.
Just, Caitlin, thanks for your proposal. A couple of quick ones. It seems to me the Chamberlain one might be, this is going to be a temporary move. Probably putting in fence, taking it out doesn't make a great deal of sense if we have other
Yeah.
areas. I think the key is going to be for you to work with our Parks and Rec department to find which of those two other areas are the least used. Because if we do have schools and kids that will use those for baseball and so on, let's try and mitigate the impact of scheduling on that if there is. But I think it can be accomplished. I think the issue is going to be which one of those two is used more, and try and focus, if we can, to move the dog park to the one that's used less for the temporary use for now.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think Newbie is used less. There's no parking there, which I mean, it isn't going to be a big deal. I don't think so many people will go there that they'll clog up the streets at one time. But that's what's nice about the 15th Street one, though, is it does have parking and it's really central, where the newbie one is a little bit out of the way. But what's nice about the newbie one is there is like some wooded trails and there's a little park area, and there's a school a little off the side there.
Right.
I don't think that they own the ballpark.
I think it's part of the park, actually,
Yeah,
I think.
I
But
think
that
so
would be a
too.
discussion we could have with the school
Yeah.
to see if they use that daily with their children.
Yeah, I've been there quite often, just walking other dogs there, and I've never seen anybody use it.
Okay. All right.
That's why I think it is less used.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Javeco?
I was just wondering about insurance, considering that you may have issues with dogs. Is there an insurance plan for it, or?
Well, there will be signage with the rules up, and it will be kind of like a use at your own risk situation. I think that with the animal bylaws that there are in place already, I think that if there was a situation, it would be like an animal control situation. But I don't think that, I mean, I can look into it further if you need insurance, but I think if you post a sign that says use at your own risk, then I don't think that is necessary. I could be wrong.
Councillor Earl?
Thank you for your presentation, and I agree with the other councillors. This is be a great amenity for the city. Quick suggestion with respect to fundraising. I don't know if the city has any decommissioned parking meters remaining, but for a temporary park or a permanent park, there might be an opportunity to place some decommissioned parking meters so people who come by with their dog can pop in a buck or two each time with
That'd be
respect to
great.
recovering. So I might encourage you to have that conversation with staff as well, just because, I mean, most people are happy to chip in a couple bucks at a time for something like that, and with respect to a $60 a month here for mowing or whatever, that would be potentially a good way to recover that cost.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? So, first of all, thank you. We really appreciate that you've taken the initiative to step forward with this. It's been an issue or a service that people have talked about for a long time, and so certainly from the city's perspective, we love to see that a volunteer organization is stepping forward to try to move forward in a service that we don't currently enjoy. So thank you for doing that. And Council will bring it back under Mayor's business and give it some direction.
Thank you.
So thank you, Callum.
Thank you.
Wasn't that bad.
A little quick.
Item 2.3, we have Mike Reedman from School District 59 and Shanice Trottier from Tremblay Elementary School in attendance regarding a request for a partnership in an after-school program. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having us.
So we've got a slideshow to accompany our presentation.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Hi.
Oh, okay, got the power.
All right, so thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to come and speak today on behalf of the After School Sports and Arts Initiative. We've had this program going for 2 years in the district, but we want to do a little, you can probably click it to the next one. So want to talk a bit about, it's on the side there?
Yep.
There's the advanced one.
This one? I'm confused.
Happens in place. So we're going to talk a bit about the purpose of the After School Sports and Arts Initiative, give you an overview of the provincial program, as well as what's happening for us locally, and then talk about potential opportunity to partner with the City of Dawson Creek and Parks and Recreation in providing that program at Tremblay Elementary School in Dawson Creek. The After School Sports and Arts Initiative is a provincial program that has a number of key goals. The first is to support partnering school districts in offering accessible, high-quality programming that meets the needs of the particular community that it serves. It also supports the schools in building those partnership connections that you need to have in order to provide quality programming with resources and knowledge and experience in putting those forward. Key piece there is the inclusive aspect, and Shanice, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah. One of the main goals is to provide a way for vulnerable learners, I would say, to connect to school in a way that would make school just a safer place for them to to be, essentially. There's also a lot of kids that participate in these programs that wouldn't have the opportunity to participate if the funding and the programs weren't in place. So even things that, such as snacks, transportation can be provided through our program. So those are kind of barriers to participation for a large portion of the population for schools where this program is offered.
We'll come back to some of that when we talk specifically about Tremblay. And the last piece there is just to support the program leaders in delivering that program as well. The key pieces for this one for our students is that confidence building that Shanice was talking about, that connection to something they may not necessarily have a connection to in school or out of school. The strong positive relationship piece that develops with other students, with staff and the community, and the notion that, or the experience of adopting a healthy lifestyle. And in this program provincially targets that, as Shanice said, students who face barriers to participation. It's designated to be a K-8 program, depending on what your school format is. And we've got that, again, running at Tremblay. We also have a smaller version of it running in Chetwynd at Windrum Elementary School in Chetwynd. We have some key contacts through the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. That's who the funding body is. Becky O'Ray and Melanie Bradford in the Ministry office, and then a consultant, Katie Bigsby, who is our key point of contact. She is the one who comes with the bulk of the knowledge and expertise around this particular program and has been with it for a while and is a key support for us pretty much on for every question we have to ask in regard to how to run this program.
Okay, so in 17-18, so the data for this year hasn't been collected yet, but we had 51 communities across BC and 147 schools in 19 school districts. So it was over 15,000 program spaces for children. And again, the funding for about 12,000 of those was through the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, and then MCFD also provided some funding for program spaces as well. So over 13,400 hours of programming in 17-18.
And that program support, as far as funding goes, 1.5 million in base funding, and then 1.2 million in grants from the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. There is an additional disability grant that we could apply for. We haven't done that yet, but giving our current student population and some of the students who we have attending the after-school program, looking at perhaps applying for that for the 2019-20 school year. And there's some expansion funding. I don't think we're in the running for that yet. Not looking at expanding our program, just trying to beef up what we currently have going.
And we'll see a little later on the stats just from Tremblay. With respect to that disability grant, we do have a significant number of students that have significant challenges that do participate in our after-school program. So that's an avenue where we can support them further through a disability grant. So that's something that we're thinking of for coming years.
The program, provincial body, has done some surveys over the last couple of years. I think it culminated in we've met with them in December of last year, and they presented the survey data. And these are some key pieces that we thought is good positive information to share. So that first one, and this is reported directly from the students participating across the districts, and 84% said they enjoy coming to school more as a result of their participation in the school programs.
And then 73% are more willing to go to school on days where the after-school program is offered. So
that was a parent stating that, so that's an interesting result. The other piece, just to think about in all of this, is that what the program does for students, besides that connectivity, but it's that students who aren't engaged in things beyond the 9 to 3 regular school day, unsupervised time can result in them being more prone to stress, lower school performance, that engagement in at-risk behaviors, and higher truancy. Busy kids have less time to sort of go astray, but we also find that connection to those programs to school makes a huge difference for them. The other piece there is the sort of academic performance gains that may happen through a stronger connection to school and less chance of those negative at-risk behaviors.
So basically how the program is set up is that there's two roles. We have a program sport or arts leader, so that's the person that provides the instruction to the children. And then there's something called the person of rapport. So it looks different in every community depending on how the program rolls out, but for example, at Tremblay, we have sports leaders and arts leaders, and those are two separate people, and those change over time depending on what we're offering at the time. The person of rapport remains constant, so that person we have found is, it can be a support staff, it can be other community members. In our case, it's a support staff that works at the school that already has those existing relationships built with students. But it can look different depending on how it's set up in a particular community.
So the program agreement we have specifies a number of things. One, that the program has to run at least 1 day a week, and in Tremblay we're running 2. Minimum 60 minutes in length is the ideal, and there's food provided usually prior to the event starting. The sport curriculum is based on the physical literacy curriculum, which Parks and Rec is really currently aware of. And the arts activities really tie into who you have for local experts and what they can bring to the program. We've had at Tremblay right now, there's pottery going on, you've had dance, you've had all sorts of different types of art instruction. And that is provided generally on the art side anyway through those specialized instructors.
So the limit is generally 25 participants per group. We want to hit a goal of one adult per 12 students or 1 adult per 10 students, which works out to 1 paid staff member to 15 participants. So at our school we've had, I think the maximum amount is about 25, and again depending on what the offering is and the interest level for kids, and it varies per day as well.
So the key to all of this is the team approach to providing the programming. It's the program coordinator, the art and sport instructors, that quality person of rapport who has those strong connections with the students and supporting them in being there. And one of the things we hear a bit that students want to come because of that person of rapport. She has such a strong connection with kids; they just want to be there and spend time with her. And that's we've been sort of blessed to have that connection already.
So, program started last year, before my time at Tremblay. I believe it was a 1-day-a-week program last year. We've now moved into 2 days per week. 1 day we offer art, 1 day we offer sports. We've offered a variety of sports through the PE leadership program through the high school. So there's students that are in a program at the high school. They earn like a stipend by coming over from the high school 1 day a week, and we've offered things: floor hockey, soccer, snowshoeing,
mostly
track
major
and field,
games, right?
Major games, volleyball, basketball, those kinds of things. So we've offered that through the high school students that come over. For our arts, we've really kind of dipped into the local expertise: pottery, drawing, drumming, all kinds of different things. Oh, yoga as well for sports. We've offered that as well. And then, as Mike said, Laura Rainey is our support staff, and that is the person of rapport. And it's like their goal in life to log time with Mrs. Rainey. So it's a huge draw for the kids, especially kids that have a tougher time finding a connection at school or finding something to like at school. It really is a draw for them to participate in the after-school program. And I would say to attend on the day that there is the program offered. So often the kids, is it Tuesday today? Is it Thursday today? They want to know if it's, to make sure that they don't miss what's going on after school. So it's, in my view, it's been very successful. But we do have, I guess we should go into just the stats before we go a little further. So we have a school population of approximately 160 students right now, between 150 and 160. So we've, over the course of the year to date, 68 different kids have participated, and that's about 41% of our total population. We've got almost an equal split of male versus female, depending on, and I think where we saw more female were things like ukulele and pottery, that were more of the arts type things that the girls were drawn to. And I would say that for sports, we saw a higher male participation. 48%, so 32, were Aboriginal students, and 11 of those students were categorized in ministry designations. So we were talking earlier about providing accessibility for students that were vulnerable or had significant challenges. So I think the numbers tell a pretty good story of the participation and how important it's been at our school.
I don't know.
To add on that?
Pardon?
Anything to add on that?
No, I think the stats are and we're proud of what's happened there over the last 2 years, but know that the program could be more robust, and that's what sort of brings us to the table today, is looking at the expertise that Parks and Recreation has in the city of Dawson Creek, and how can we work together to provide a more robust program. And I don't know if your video is going to work.
I don't know if our video will work there. I'm not sure if that.
Maybe.
Let's try again.
It's pretty small.
Okay,
So maybe we'll just
It's thinking. See it.
Oh, I've seen this
See?
before.
We'll wait for a couple hours.
Mine does that a lot.
So maybe we'll just talk about sort of the big piece of the presentation. That's the opportunity for the school district and our after-school sport and art program to partner with the city of Dawson Creek. We were at a forum back in December of last year, and we saw a number of different models that are being used across the mentioned 151 schools, I think, and in 19 districts. And some of them, Parks and Recreation in those communities actually run the programs at the school. And part of that is the expertise that they bring to the table around the physical literacy piece, the training that Parks and Recreation staff have in providing those types of programs. The ability of the school district to contract, the money is there. We saw some of the dollar figures that are provided through the provincial after-school sports and arts body. And then the challenge of a school leader kind of running the program off the side of her desk and seeing someone who might be sort of designated to that particular program. We truly value the role that the high school students have been providing for us on the sports side, but recognize that they don't come with a whole lot of expertise in working directly with kids or around some of the physical literacy piece. They're very keen and interested in the sports that they are participating in, but not necessarily have some of the skills that folks with specific training would have in providing that program.
And they're also busy people. They got a lot going on in high school, so it's always the commitment part is sometimes a challenge for them. So we're really looking to have people who are knowledgeable, reliable, and just have that training to work with the kids around the sports pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And the arts, I like our what we see going forward is if it was Parks and Rec to take that on, continuing to access those community resources to provide those pieces in terms of short contracts. We've been running contracts between 6 and 8 weeks is the program length. One was extremely popular, so we doubled it up and did I think 10 or 12 weeks, and it was drawing. We had a local artist that offered a drawing program that was really, really popular. So that part of it was very smooth and went really well. So I think that would be a pretty easy continuation if it were to be taken on by Parks and Rec.
Yeah, and I think we've had, I mentioned it before, we've had lots of success and don't want to diminish the work that's been done at the school level to provide that, but thinking that from the models that we've seen where Parks and Rec come in and help support those programs, the breadth and depth of the curriculum they can provide, the continuity through a sports leader who might be there more longer term than someone who's a student or a group of students rotating through, provides some key pieces, and that sort of would be a win for us. The win for Parks and Rec, I think, would be the partnership piece with us, but also that this would come sort of fully funded, that we would work through a contract that would make sure that all of the funding side of it would be a win for Parks and Recreation on the financial side. Wouldn't want the city to step into anything that would be a detriment to budgets at this time. So that would be the big piece for us. So I think that's it as far as our formal presentation. I want to thank you for allowing us to come and present this and put this forward, and just really open to any questions or comments you may have about that.
Thank you. Council? Councillor Parslow?
Is this a 12-month program, or is it just school year?
We run it through the school year.
So nothing happens for these kids during the summer. Is that possible?
Pardon me?
Is it possible to make it a 12th? I mean, let's face it, kids are only in school 1 day out of 2 a year, so...
I think given our short summer and the weather, I think anything's probably possible. It just takes us sitting down and sort of figuring out what that might look like. Our buildings generally under maintenance during the summer for portions of it, so that might create some initial barriers, but not something we couldn't work through. Yeah.
Further comments, questions? Councillor Earl and Councillor Lexstrom?
So you guys at Tremblay have been doing it since 2017, 2018. How far back, do you know how far back the program goes? And what, the reason I ask is kind of just wondering at the stability of the funding.
Yeah, and I can't say the exact number of years, but it's been on for a while. And we asked that same question when we were at the meeting back in December, is, we don't jump into something where the funding is going to be pulled on us. And there's a pretty strong history of it. I would say probably 8 years minimum. It's been around for a bit. And given the breadth of it, with the 51 schools in those 19 districts, I think of the numbers, I think the likelihood of that being pulled is, well,
it's
I
always
can't
possible,
speak for the government, but it's a pretty strong program with pretty positive results across the payback for it is pretty positive across those districts, and we saw evidence of that in the presentations from a number of districts that were at that meeting with us as well.
Councillor Lexstrom?
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. So, I like the concept. Have you had any early discussions with our Parks and Rec yet, or is that kind of, this is the beginning step that we would like to see if we can find a partnership to work together and deliver this model through that group?
We've opened the door a little bit with some early discussions about provided information. There's a startup package and the deliverables that we have to meet, and so they have that. So they've seen some of that, and the recommendation will come to council to help move that forward.
Okay.
And make sure council's well aware of what the program does and what the benefits are for the community. And one of the pieces it didn't say in there, though, that school connectedness, but it's community connectedness too.
Mm-hmm.
And if our students are strongly connected to the schools in the community, that branches out to their larger connection as well. So I think it's a good, very, very good way to sort of work with some of those students who might not have that connection already.
Anytime we can engage the youth, I mean, and you've touched on it early, it's very important, not just for themselves, but for our community as a whole and as they grow up. With this being focused on just Tremblay, as I understand it, is there an opportunity to look at broadening that? Are other schools interested in this? And I don't know if you're able to answer that or not.
Well, initially we focused on Tremblay simply because of the student population there. It meets that criteria. It has a higher number of students who meet some of those terms that were in that presentation. So that would be our target. Again, I go back to Kamloops is a much larger district than us, but they partnering with Parks and Rec, and they offered across. It's a number of schools throughout Kamloops. They would rotate days. They have a couple of paid staff people who support those programs, and we would, if the success was there, and we saw a couple of other schools that might benefit from that, we'd definitely be looking at that. Tremblay has historically has had lower after-school participation in extracurricular activities. It dipped for a bit.
And I would say that it was the after-school activities, as far as school works, it's all voluntary by teachers. And there was, I think, just less offering for a period of time. There was less offering of after-school things for a period of time. And in the meantime, we've had this program introduced after school, as well as a resurgence of our after-school programming too. So we've got our traditional basketball, volleyball teams, as well as this going on. But that was my understanding was that was kind of perfect timing at the time that the program was introduced with, that we had a low offering of regular type after-school activities. The neat thing about this is that it's art, and often after-school offerings are sports teams. So this was kind of the neat addition.
And if the video had shown there, just the cross-grade grouping there, we initially thought to break it up an intermediate group and a primary group, but there are students in that clay workshop with 24 of them there, I think, right from grade one right through to grade 7. So it's neat to get an opportunity to work together in that as well.
We do try to mix it up. Sometimes it's grade 2 to 5, sometimes grade 4 to 7, sometimes grade 1 to 3. We try to offer something for all age levels.
So thank you. I'm afraid we have to move on. And we appreciate your coming in this morning, your presentation, and we'll bring it back under Mayor's business.
Well, thank you for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. 2.4, our next delegation is James Cox from the Mile Zero Cruisers in attendance for requests for a couple of events coming for the Mile Zero Cruisers. Good morning, James. Welcome.
Morning.
Good to have you here today.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. My name is James Cox. I'm the president of the Mile Zero Cruiser Car Club. I'm here on behalf of the club requesting support for the city of Dawson Creek. This year our club is celebrating our 25th anniversary. The dates this year are July 12th, 13th, and 14th. 25 years of being part of the community is a great feeling. We host this event with Sunday being free for the public to see our passion for vehicles of all different eras and styles, from personal touches to long hours of time that's been put in them to showcase to the public. Our show this year has already brought people to our community with our online registration at our best pre-show registration numbers ever. We have our guests coming from as far away as Idaho and Winnipeg that are coming to see what we offer in Dawson Creek. Sunday is our main event, but it starts on Friday, July 12th at the Co-op Mall. Then on Saturday, we host our guests with a poker rally that brings the people to different places. Then we have our guests for supper at the Encana Event Center. There we thank them for coming to our event and our city. Today I asked for the city's support again this year in putting out the no parking signs Saturday, July 13th on our street closure area for the Sunday's event. Also, our streets cleaned in this area so we can showcase Dawson Creek at its best to our guests from all over Western Canada and the USA. I also would like to welcome the mayor and councillors to the Sunday show, July 14th at the downtown core, and come see what we offer in Dawson Creek. So if you can get through the crowds, hopefully. I just want to say thanks again for the support from the Mile Zero Cruiser Car Club.
Thank you, James. Council, questions, comments? Anyone? So obviously, it's amazing to see the evolution of the Mile Zero Cruisers show of 25 years, and it's crazy that it has done that, and upwards of now 400 entries or whatever it is, getting to or more. It's crazy how it's evolved into this amazing event for our community, and sincerely, I know all of us appreciate the work that the volunteers are putting into this event and continuing to grow it and get it bigger and better. And so without any other questions, we'll certainly move it back to Mayor's business and deal with the request at that time. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And best of luck, and we'll see you.
Just got some light reading material if anybody wants.
We appreciate it. We'll get it to everybody.
Latest and greatest.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you. Poor man.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
I'll take one for
Yeah.
council.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. 2.5, we have Aaron Root, event organizer for the Peace Country Toyota Burnout Competition, in attendance. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. So I'm also part of the Mile Zero Car Club, and last spring we were discussing what could we bring to the car show to make more people come for the whole weekend as Peace Country Toyota, and I had suggested a burnout competition. So we organized the event in 6 weeks. I did a lot of fundraising. It costs Peace Country Toyota to put this on, and we have no problem with it. We had, with $100 Facebook advertising, we had 32 participants. We did over 40 different runs. And what I'm proposing to do is to actually install a concrete pad in parking lot A at zero cost to the city. B&C Trucking, Joe Loomis, or CETA Trucking, I have both of them on board. There will be zero cost. They're donating everything. Gerald Lindbergh with Lindbergh Construction will install everything. I have rebar donated. I have concrete at cost. We're going to do some anchor points so that we can actually put, what we want to do is set it up so that we can move it for different widths of vehicles, do front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, and the intention eventually is to also get more motorbikes involved in the car show weekend. We have Paul Stewart is looking at ways to build a front wheel locking system for bikes, and we can probably, next year's the plan, to run 2 motorbikes at the same time to do the burnout competition, to involve them as well. There's been lots of planning in how to build this pad from lots of different professionals, because we don't want to make a mistake when we're installing it. Yeah, is there any questions?
Questions of council? Thank you. Councillor Lekstrom.
Well, I think it's a great idea. Did I understand you wanted to concrete the entire parking lot?
No.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah, that city would love that. No, it'll be 12 feet wide by 20 feet long.
Yeah, no, I read that.
Right. I did give some diagrams of where we wanted it to be and kind of how it was going to be set up. The main pad's going to be 6 inches thick. Where the anchor points are going to be is going to be 12 inches thick, and that was as per Gerald Lindbergh. We're also finding a way. We're going to build a system so that we can plug those holes off so that they don't have water go into them during the spring and any rainy seasons, and also be able to have it big enough that if, with checking on it regularly, if there is any water, we can pump it out right away.
All right.
I have discussed with Encana Center, because the last thing any of us want is to be woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning every Saturday or Friday night all summer to just put a temporary concrete block over it that can be moved with the machinery that the Encana Center already has.
Could I just follow?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Pat, have you discussed this with anybody from the city yet, like location-wise? I think it's a great idea.
I did with Ryan.
Okay.
We actually are proposing to put it in the same spot as last year.
Okay.
I have 2 40-foot trailers coming that will seat 300 people each. And then we also have the berm that we can use again this year. We have traffic control already checked in with CRS to see what we needed for a game plan on that. Energetic flagging is going to be running it. And then we also have Richard Payne through South Peace is going to be in charge of parking. And we're going to have the whole parking lot A blocked off probably Friday night. Because last year we had a little bit of a rush of people in that we had no one there at 7:15 and 2,000 people, no one there at 7 o'clock and 2,000 people down there at 7:15. So we will be a little bit more organized and prepared for the rush of people this year.
All right. I think the key will be to make sure we find the perfect location that works with the city as well in
Yep.
the event center. The other one, the sign. I know on your drawing you have a sign. Is that a temporary sign?
I was trying to show on the parking lot where the big sign is there,
okay.
as
I thought
opposed
you were
to
gonna
where
put
it's
a
going to
sign.
go.
Okay.
Yeah, so kind of the similar location to where we did. It was right kind of in front of the sign in
Yeah.
parking lot A. That position gives us a really good spot because we can have the vehicles that have not went behind the burnout area. The people, once they have gone, they can go onto the other side. And Integra Tire is going to be there doing tire changes free of charge again this year. And it's a location running generators and light towers and everything that will kind of centralize everything.
Okay.
It's why we picked that spot last year. And I guess it's a 12 by 20 spot that the city won't have to pave later.
All right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Aaron. So we'll bring it back under Mayor's business, and appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next delegation this morning, we have Ryan McIver and Barry Reynard in from the Encana Event Center, Tourism Dawson Creek, and our regards to our annual report.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan.
Is this fun?
Thanks.
It's that one.
Good morning, everyone. Here to provide our annual report and a bit of update for you. First, just to go through our annual report with you. 2018 was the 10-year anniversary for the Encana Event Center. And so our milestones for the venue and for the city with that, where we've seen a tremendous amount of use and acts and opportunity that the venue has provided for the city. As part of the annual report, as you go through, I'm going to highlight on some of the pages or items that's within it. On page 9, we went back and we listed every large define large, but large event that has gone through the venue. This by means is not a definitive list of all the events that have happened within the venue, whether it be a small meeting or a workshop that has happened or partaked at the event center. But you know, it's when you look back at the list, it's pretty hard hitting in terms of the caliber and act and what has come to the Peace Country. Really, so, you know, on the next sort of 2 pages there, 12 and 13, are sort of, you know, some of the metrics that stand out as part of reporting requirements for the City of Dawson Creek. Really, this is just a snapshot with it, and full audited financial statements, both for tourism and the Ecan Event Center, have been provided to the City of Dawson Creek, and is provided monthly as well for their review. I think the big thing as we looked in terms of the new contract that was signed was breaking out some of the business that's done at the event center. And so there's sort of the traditional events, which are for-profit, community access events, which are sort of non-profit, sort of originated and for community-based, and then events that are happened that are booked through the city. And so you can sort of break out so those 3 sort of buckets in terms of the activity level within those. And then the total number of events that happened within the facility was 74, with a total 159 event days, with a total attendance of 69,000 people going through the building. We sort of run through the numbers there, and really what it comes down to, the bottom line there is that in terms of the operating loss for the building, is that we again have beat budget. I think this is the 9th year again where we've been under the budget attributed, so that revenue, that remainder revenue, comes back to the City of Dawson Creek in an accounting entry that the City of Dawson Creek does. One of the things that we've also started tracking the last couple years is that the event center can attribute that I can attribute that we personally, or not personally, that the events booked over 289 room nights for over 1,562 289 rooms for 1,562 room nights. So we're really trying to get a sense of what that, again, economic impact that the event center and the events do bring. Some of the other stats that has been asked for was ensuring that our staff are local. I can say that 100% of our staff at the event center is local, and over 95% of our purchases are invested local. Taking out your traditional CRA, other government remittances, artist payments, etc., but 95% of our purchases are made local. With respect to tourism, last year was our first year, full year of running tourism on your behalf, and you can see sort of the some of the stats and facts there for you as well. You know, as we move through the cycle of tourism, some of the information and numbers and business that was happening was already well in progress before we took over, so we really couldn't make some big changes or any changes or change in pricing or anything sort of like that. So this is sort of the year that we're in that process to ensure that we can either increase revenues, decrease some of those costs, or find a better balance within the yield management. We can, some of the sort of the stats that ran through the visitor center last year for you as well, in terms of number of caravans and number of bus tours that we facilitated through the visitor center, and the gift shop that we run to offset some of the costs of the tourism of the visitor center. Notionally, the busiest time of the months are really from May long weekend through to September, leading into October and into November, and then it sort of falls off from there. So the next couple of pages really talk about tourism in terms of us, Spectra, taking on the contract for Tourism Dawson Creek, and sort of our 3, some of the focuses there is really the Alaska Highway House, the Visitor Center at Eddingar Park, and the Mobile Visitor Center. But it also, as we roll into this year, 2019, about the primacy about sports and event tourism, and so there'll be more of that as we look into next year's annual report and some of that specific reporting. As we roll through to the next couple of pages, we talk about the 5-year hosting agreement with Hockey Canada, and really where we kicked off Canada's national women's team training in Dawson Creek. The 5-year Hockey Canada hosting agreement is, again, another watershed moment for the venue and for the city, as it's never happened before within Hockey Canada's history. And as we hear through the grapevine that there are many communities, sports organizations that are calling Hockey Canada to figure out how we did it and how they can do it as well. So it's pretty interesting and great opportunity. And then also was announcement of the World Junior A Challenge in December, this coming December. As we roll through, we just talk about the venue and the organizational structure. As I look to the next, whatever page that is, 28, we talk about the energy highlights, which is sort of that summary of all the energy uses over the years. And we continue to see a decline as we look to make improvements to the building in terms of whether it be better use and use of LED lighting, more efficient manners of using our energy and our energy practices. But with all those, the management of, we still see continued increase of cost of natural gas going up or the utilities going up. So there's this balance is sort of still going to come out of whack as those utility prices, and even as part of this year's budget process, it was in January, February where the price of electricity has gone up again 1.4%, I believe, this year. That was sort of unseen, that was sort of just dropped in our lap. One of the things that sometimes I think gets often underlooked, I guess, or overlooked is the walking track. So we wanted to really highlight sort of some of the stats and facts that some of your city staff track and monitor. But really some detailed breakdowns of the walking track. It's free of charge. Obviously, it's really quite busy at the beginning of the year as everyone's trying to work through their challenge, New Year's resolutions perhaps, or the weather is quite worse. The summer it falls right off, and then it gains more use in the fall. And we see more use in the morning than we do in the afternoon. I think the stats that the city has kept over the last 9 years have been pretty impactful in terms of understanding of who's using the facility for the walking track. 2018, next page, talks about all the events that have happened within the facility, whether it be a large event or a small event. And then just as we look to highlight some of the different aspects, is one of the things is that we've done is we've hired an artist that creates custom gig posters for the artists that we give to them as a present. And we only print 5 to 10 the number posters as there are band members, and 1 extra for the venue. And so they get printed, they get handed out to the artist, and then they take them home, put them in their rec rooms and their studios, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen a great response from that as they share that photo of that gig poster across their social media channels. Following page just sort of gives a highlight to sort of what has happened over the last 10 years. Over 750,000 people have come through the Encan Event Center, and we've hosted well over 600 events since the opening. Just down below are just some of the pictures of some of the staff as it relates to our 5-year, as we celebrate 5-year, but also 10-year milestones with some of the employees that the venue has, whether they're part-time or full-time. It's always something for us to celebrate. Is the building is just a structure, but it's really the people that make it happen. And some of these staff, there's some gaps in between the events that we have, but these staff are dedicated to ensure that the hospitality and the guest experience is top-notch. The next couple of pages really just talk about some other stats in terms of 2018, sort of where our ticket orders come from, not number of tickets, but ticket orders, where people are purchasing their tickets, and some of our social media outreach in terms of our use and how many people that we've reached out and touched, in terms of that we can really quantify through the prevalence of social media, and our continued growth in our social media accounts as well. Next couple of pages talks about how we're doing in terms of every event. After every event we do, major event, we do a post-event survey, and you can sort of see the results of the enjoyment of the people or non-enjoyment that the people have within the venue. But also at the year end, we do a year-end survey where we survey everyone that's willing to provide their information to us in terms of those results. And I think that we're doing a pretty good job in terms of how we're doing. I think there's obviously always room for improvement, but I think it's always good to ensure we track and monitor what we're doing. And then really, as we look to the final part of this, is that last year we looked and worked with the community and donate over $60,000 worth of goods or services back to the community, whether it be auction items being presented onto different organizations, whether it be tickets or signed guitars, or us working through our concessions and leveraging nonprofit organizations to work within the building, and then they get a percentage of revenue back to their charity, through to working through our ticketing system and just do a quick add-on, so people can just add $5 or $10 to their ticket purchase, and that money gets directly donated to charity. On the food services side, just talks about some of our different opportunities and focus on them. You know, Mercer Hall, Co-op Mercer Hall, was a great addition and has been a great addition to the venue in terms of our ability to book a whole wide range of different events. So in 2018, for the three months that it was available to book, we did 17 events. You know, over 220 people were the first that used it, was through the Women's Training, Hockey Canada Training Campus, plus of the gala, and we've really worked through that venue in terms of trying to provide lots of opportunity for it. You know, pretty interesting stats that, you know, we've got lots of information, but over 22,000 glasses of draft beer was served in 2018. I don't know. There's lots of stats, lots of popcorn stats, whatever it might be. Also, one of the things that we have done is expanded our reach within the community as the brand of ticketsinthepeace.com. There's lots of information and misinformation about having local events on the Canada Event Center website, and so we created ticketsinthepeace.com, and this is the listing of all the events that we've helped throughout the community and the region in terms of helping sell their tickets and promote their events through ticketsinthepeace.com. And then on top of that, we also have a relationship with energetictickets.ca in Fort St. John, and doing the same sort of ticketing service in the North Piece as well. And really, as we, you know, that's sort of really a synopsis for you for the 2018 annual report. I did also wanted to provide you another document, which I handed out, was ways to connect. You know, one of the comments that we have received from different aspects has been, how do we connect with people? And so this is a listing of all the Facebook accounts, Instagram, Twitter, but also some of the digital newsletters that we get out there. It's pretty robust. We have, you know, when we think about marketing to different people, we have different, like swim lanes. Some people, you know, swim faster, slower, and some is just an open swim. And each one of these social media channels are ways for us to connect to them depending on the message and the story that we need to tell. So it's just worthwhile for you now that with tourism, how that expands as well as that message expands. When you attach the reports, annual report was the tourism report for you. Sort of really just want to highlight some big aspects is not so much to the detail of it but really are keeping track and to the promise that we've made to you, which is on the sports primacy of the sports and event tourism, and the sort of the strategic priorities chart in terms of understanding of where we stand on the deliverables that you've asked us to do. There are a few gaps that we're sort of behind on and a bunch that we're ahead on, and so we just look to keep moving forward on that, but we're really looking at different opportunities and some of those as we work with the community groups and the events that we have to ensure that we don't misstep on those opportunities and be focused on necessary all strategy. Also within the document is provided a couple of the Mile Zero signal, some of the messaging that we've been putting out in the last little while for you, and some of the advertisements that we placed last year within the key marketing publications. And you know, specifically, I just want to touch base on it. It's a very basic ad, but we really wanted to quantify, you know, does the advertisement work? And so we're testing it by handing out free certificates at the visitor center or admission to the Alaska Highway House. And we're going to soon see over the summer to see what's the most popular advertisement, et cetera, et cetera. I will tell you that we are getting a lot of traction in terms of people coming into these the visitor center in the Alaska Highway House. And the importance to that is that one-on-one counseling opportunity to meet the staff to help slow them down so they can experience the Peace Region, Tumbler Ridge, Chetwynd, and the surrounding area. As we relate to sports and events, tourism, I know Barry can touch base a little bit on it, but it's full steam ahead. We've met with our hoteliers just to give a check-in with them, but we're well underway with the Oil Kings event and the Oil Kings event and the World Junior A Challenge in December. We're just in the process of finalizing some aspects under sponsorship and ticketing, but I feel very positively, you know, that we're well on our way and right on track. Anything to add to that, Barry?
I thought I just became very shy and quiet since I started working for Ryan. No, I think there's a lot of stuff on the go. I think council will be pleasantly surprised at the movement that some of the sport tourism side is going to do. Certainly the working with hoteliers and empowering ourselves and working with them has come a long way. We've met with every hotelier. We've dropped in not once but twice and starting to get some different feedback. Very excited about some possible opportunities as we move forward that are generated from the 5-year agreement. Lindsay and I were both in Ottawa, and they were called 8-minute dating sessions, speed dating, and I think we surprised a lot of national sport organizations just by the fact that when they said, have you ever hosted a big event, what we've done and where we've gone has been very impressive. We're certainly getting a lot of support within the region. Are going out to 3 communities to have the exhibition games of the World Junior A Challenge. Chetwynd, I can tell you, is very excited that one game is going there. As well as Fort St. John and Grand Prairie. There's some linkages of the border opportunities for some of our future partnerships with OAG as well. So looking forward to bringing those forward. We'll be attending an opportunity coming up that we'll have additional meetings with OAG at the Golf Gallery that I'll be attending through Hockey Canada.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming in this morning. Council, questions? Comments? Councillor Lexton?
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. It is amazing to think, you know, whether many of us who travel outside the region, you know, people talk about how did you manage to get that event in Dawson Creek or that band to come, so good work. Hey, a quick question on page 12, your financial highlights that you touched on briefly, if I could just more for clarification. So when I look at your budget and you look at gross ticket revenue, for example, your actual was 1.79, budget 1.9. I'm guessing that reflects maybe the number of events that you had thought you may get versus what actually applied. Is that kind of what varies that number?
So there's a couple of factors. As we do our budget process starts in October, we sort of have an idea what happens in the first quarter, but it's sort of that, what does that look like for the following, you know, last quarter, last half of the year? So that has an impact in terms of what we think is going to happen, the business of the events. Last year, if you remember, Mr. Russell Peters decided not to play in Dawson Creek, so that would have provided a gap within the gross ticket revenue. The other aspect is the price of the ticket. So if it's a $130 ticket compared to, say, a $50 ticket, that has an impact on the gross in terms of the actual gross ticket revenue as well.
Okay.
So it's a combination of number of events, but also the price of the ticket price.
Okay. And then following down below where it alters somewhat, the total ancillary and surcharge income.
Mm-hmm.
What's that encapsulate?
So it's a bit of a bigger bucket. So that will include your food and beverage, facility fees, convenience fees, sort of all the ticketing aspect of that business, the food and beverage aspects, the catering, concessions, beer sales, popcorn sales, all that sort of stuff, merchandise, etc.
Okay. And then the operating income loss, the last line, where you show a 15,239 variance to the positive. That's the,
Better than budget.
yeah, exactly.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, quick question, is that what you reflect comes back to the city?
Correct.
That's the number?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Brian, Barry. Appreciate you guys coming in, and good job. Thank you. How are you doing? You're all right? How are you? Okay. So we're going to move now to new council or business. Council.
Thanks.
Minutes of our regular meeting of council, May 27th for adoption. Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Earl. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Any business arising out of those minutes? Correspondence letter, first letter 6.1, we have a letter from Jeanette Farrar from the Kalipi president, request to raise the flag for the Philippine Independence Day this week. Councillor Parslow.
I'd like to move that we grant the request.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, we have a letter from Chris Leggett, CAO from the village of Pooskoopi regarding a request for a Canada Day transit service request. Duncan, do you want to speak to this quickly for council?
Sure. Through your worship, this is something that is requested annually and is no cost to the city. They cover all costs. We have the agreement with BC Transit, so they are unable, it's easier to go through the city with the existing agreement than to form a new agreement.
Thank you.
All right.
Councillor Parslow.
Move we grant the request.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Lexstrom. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.3, we have a letter from Carol Rood, the treasurer of the Mile Zero Cruisers, regarding a request to use the city vacant lots for the car show. Councillor Javetkov.
Move we approve the request.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.4, we have a letter from Chad Hagee, a rural Dawson Creek resident, regarding a request to consider expansion of the rural fire protection area.
Excuse me, your worship, I'm
Yeah.
going to declare conflict. I live in that area. So.
Thank you. Councillor Lexstrom?
Could we receive this for discussion?
Sure.
I would so move.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Javetkov, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
So on this issue, I mean, it's something I think that's been thought about for a long time, not just in our region. We have a 5-mile rural fire protection that we have an agreement with our rural neighbors on now. Area D, I believe, would be the direct impact on that. Has there been discussion with Area D on looking at an expansion like this and what the additional costs may be and what could come into play in working together to deliver this service? Also, the actual legal impacts on what our city could possibly face. If you go beyond your limits and a fire occurs back in your own community, that's the biggest challenge. People always wonder, why is there a cutoff? I think probably historically there has been that 5 mile, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 5-mile radius that we can cover from within a city. Going further than that starts to limit your ability to either have crews backfill or get back in time if there was an additional fire. But the more we can cover, the happier I would be, not just the ability to provide safety for the residents, but we also have to know, can this work? And I'm curious whether that discussion has occurred yet.
Okay.
So through your worship, it is complex, right? It is through the RD. It would require service establishment bylaw through the RD. We have done some preliminary work, and the RD has that information. Yes, once you go outside of that 5, 6, whatever the established boundary is, it does present challenges. You need some mutual aid agreements. You need water shuttle. You need storage off-site that can be accessed if you are dealing with a fire out in that area. Some of that work has been done, but really it depends on what the area is. If it's, in this particular case, if it's just that area, that presents a different challenge than if it's a larger area or in other areas. My understanding is this letter has also been presented to the RD, and I understand that they are going to take a look at it. That request for this service should come through them as, the mayor probably can speak to, there is a process in the RD through the directors for establishing these bylaws. But yeah, I mean, at this point, this is something we could provide, but there would be some hurdles we would have to surpass, I guess, with the RD.
But I guess just following through, it would be, really, this initiation has to come through the RD with a request to the city, can we entertain?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we'll engage with the Area D Director, Leonard Hebert, and follow up with them in regards to the request for their action and request to the city. Duncan?
And just through your worship, just because I know Chad is here, we should be able to provide them enough information that preliminary they can take a look at this and make some decisions moving forward. We do have some of that data and we have some of that information, so it's not like we're starting fresh on this, so they should be able to progress if they wish to.
All right.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
Yes, just refresh my memory about Mr. Middleton. Is this in addition to what Mr. Middleton was requesting a few years back?
To your worship, I don't recall.
Or is this the same request?
This is different, I believe, and I know that Wayne was looking at some extension of the services out in that Briar Ridge area and in that area, and I don't know that we ever heard anything further from the RD in regards to that area of extension.
And then a different, do I have a conflict of interest here that I have a very close family who would live in this area?
To your worship, I would lean on Cindy since Brenda has stepped out, but I don't know what you're making.
We're not dealing with anything, and so at that point, when the formal decision comes, then you may have to decide then. Further discussion on the request? We don't need a further motion to receive for information, or do you want one?
Sorry.
Just if I could, to make sure that the regional district will address this and move it forward, how do we make sure that happens? If we receive for information and the RD didn't move on it, all I'm asking is if they want to move it, we would enter discussions to see if it's something we could do.
We will follow up formally with the Peace River Regional District on Thursday. We have a board meeting, and I'll ask Director Hebert at that point because they'll have the letter as well.
Terrific. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. 6.5, we have a letter from Lisa Helps, the Mayor of the City of Victoria, request for support of a resolution to restore provincial support for libraries. Councillor Parsons?
I'd like to move to receive this for information.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Duekoff. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And 6.6, we have a letter from Melissa, our grant writer, request for a letter of support for NDIT's Fabulous Festivals and Events grant for the Dawson Creek Music Festival. Councillor Lexton?
I would move that we support the recommendation before us, that we support the request for the application.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Reports. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and washroom, and then we'll get back into our reports. Reports. Report number 19084 from our finance manager, the 2018 Capital Asset Status Report. So perhaps if we could use this as an opportunity to receive for discussion.
So
Councillor Lexton, second. Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Flavia, do you want to introduce the topic and the author?
Yes, so Your Excellency, so the report is a report that is the fourth time that we are presenting that. The last time was in 2015 based on 2014 numbers. So the idea here is to present what is the current status of our tangible capital assets. It's very important to emphasize that when we talk about 345 million in tangible assets as of 2018, that's historical value, because that's how we recognize on the books, not replacement value, but this is how much we paid for our buildings, for our equipment at a historical basis. So the report mainly break down the last 5 years, what's the cost of our tangible capital assets per group, and also per service. We had heavily invested in the last 5 years on spending about 85 million, and we also provide a breakdown what was the key spendings that we had in the last 5 years. From this 85 million, 36 million was on utilities, and we break down, like we had the treatment plant, the water reservoir, and then also the spendings on building and other categories. Also, we present a comparison, what's our cumulative depreciation, again, based on historical basis. And then we do a comparison that if the depreciation is higher than the average, that means we will need to invest it significantly on that specific category. So right now, the one that's showing a little high on cost analysis is equipment, machine and equipment. And we do have a fleet program that we work towards annually to invest in the equipment pool and project those replacements. We also did something new on this report compared to the previous one, is about emphasize the replacement cost. Because like I said, this report is based on tangible capital assets, the one that we report on financial statements, and that's on historical one. We do have a series of master plans from different categories of our infrastructure, and we kind of try to highlight here the key ones that we have available. They are from different years of issuance, 2013, 2015, and the most recent one on 2019, which we internally prepared. So that shows what is the current expected replacement that we need to do with our infrastructure and specifically. We also kind of present, we do have annually an assessment that's done for the purpose of insurance of our buildings. So if you see, our historical say that we have 147 million in buildings, where this report that we prepare annually says on the replacement cost for the terminology of insurance is 268 million. So I always keep this in mind. When we talk about the replacement, is based on replacement cost, not necessarily historical cost. Also, based on the exercise we did, if we use historical cost and the using depreciation of those historical costs, is about 1.6 million that we would necessarily needs to be investing on capital annually. Again, historical basis, not necessary replacement. So we do suggest that we build up a consolidated asset management plan, considering again all these different versions of master plans that we have. So something more updated and where it can be the basis for also the future decisions for investment on capital. And this is for now. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Flavia. Questions? Council. So, Councillor Luxton?
Well, thank you, and thank you, Flavia, for the report. I think it is important to note, and you hit on something that I was going to ask, and you covered it off very quickly. The difference between what we paid and what it is to do the same thing today is very important as we look at our financials, because it can be, as you pointed out, with just the one $100 million difference to what we're going to see. So as we move forward, our tangible capital assets are what really are the backbone of our city. Probably the most in people's minds are our roads. We're on the most every day and so on. But when you look at it and the plan, when we look at what we're talking about, I think we have to, as we move forward on this issue, is look at a tangible capital asset reserve fund plan as well to be included in that, because we have to, as we look at our financial picture, and we've stressed this lots over the next number of years, we're going to take a significant portion of fair share revenue from the operation side to the capital side, which is going to help, but we still need to focus on building reserve funds for these very instances, because if something goes goes sideways with a building, for example, and it's not an insurance issue, we have to be able to fund that recovery of that building, whether it's a full rebuild, whether it is a partial rebuild. So I love the report. I think going forward, it's just defines again, I think, our need to look at what our future of our assets are. And as we do that, we need a fund to be able to point to, whether it's going to start, you know, this year, next year. We do to a degree. I think we got to look at expanding that. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
I love this report. It's, for many reasons, it's well written, well researched. I congratulate the author for that. This, I think, will need to be reflected in our budget process. Obviously, a minimum of 8.6. What has been in the last, do you have it, last 10 years, what's been the average that we've reinvested in? You say 8.6, which is the 2018 annual depreciation.
Yeah, that's the depreciation. I just know, like, I don't have the whole data here, but in 5 years was 86 million invested, and that was heavily, like we know in 2017 was about 25 million, where it involves the utility plan, the infrastructures of utilities. Now, the average in the last 10 years, I can't look for it. I don't have this available right now.
One of the things that stood out for me was the asset base as a whole is approximately 54% through its useful life, which is a flag. So there's a number of flags in here, which just again highlights the important work in dealing with the fiscal gap. Mm-hmm. I certainly think there needs to be a master plan, and I don't see that in the end recommendation. So is staff looking for a resolution today that we do set the pathway towards this master plan?
To your worship, the recommendation in the report is received for information. As we're moving forward, this is something Flavia is already working on, incorporating all of these master transportation plans. We're also working on the 10-year capital plan, so that all feeds into this asset management and tangible asset management plan. So I don't know that a resolution is required at this point, but it is something we're working on.
So this is work that staff is heading towards?
Yeah, this is where we need to be.
And there is a requirement for us to have a tangible capital asset plan in place, legislated, right? Like,
yeah. By 2022?
By 2021, 2022?
Yeah.
Something. And thank you. Further questions? Councillor Laxton?
Just following through on that, and I would follow through on Councillor Parslow's. When I look at the recommendation, yet I go back and I read that staff suggests that a detailed consolidated. I'm going to interpret then that if we receive this information, you're well aware, and I know you are, Flavia, then you're working on it. That's going to be part of it. I would certainly encourage us as we do that to look, as we develop our strategy and put that master plan, that we also put our tangible capital asset surplus fund or recovery fund as part of a key issue of that, and if we could.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so because I do have in my mind, just to share the idea, it's like for the reserve, I have an idea of create a separated, either a policy or a suggestion of the breakdown, how we should dedicate the reserves for specific areas of tangible capital asset. And then for tangible capital assets, right now we just mentioned suggestions, but then my idea is to come with another separated report of options where we can go outside and get grants to use for preparing the master of the master plan, where we would have the consolidated. And then I would come with the suggestion for us to officialize through a report of going towards to prepare, search for funds to prepare this master plan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I reiterate the comments that have been made. I think it's a great information for us. It's great data for us to know. The fiscal gap was a report done in 2013 with a whole bunch of assumptions for the future, and revenues were part of that, Peace River Agreement, and so now as we move closer and further down the road, it's information, in my view, that, like this, that gives us the ability to put that plan in place for us for that strong financial future, and why the importance for us of moving into a healthy capital program, and the importance of moving that Peace River Agreement money into capital. This report emphasizes that, why it's so important for council to do that work. So, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Motion to receive for information then. Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Earl, discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have a report 19096 from the General Manager of Community Services regarding the implications of the Peace River Regional District Trail proposal. Councillor Javetkov.
Proceed for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Duncan, do you want to speak to this first before we open to council?
Sure. So through your worship, I believe it was April, we had the Peace River Regional District present their feasibility study for a trail between Pooskoopie and Dawson Creek. Going back, I guess, a little further, this started in July of 2017 when the RD approached the city and asked for a letter of support for a grant to conduct a feasibility study. Council at that time approved that letter and approved support of that project, and so this is the resulting report. So they provided that trail section, and council at that meeting said, you know, we know we have some challenges within some of the areas identified within that report and part of that plan, and we'd like to have staff bring back some information regarding that. So this report is essentially highlighting that the area between the mall and the Rotary Bridge and even past that has some challenges. We have done some preliminary work over the last couple years. We have done some geotech information or data collection, and it's a pretty substantial investment in that area of the trail, which all of the RD proposed routes, except for maybe one, funnel through. So if we were going to move forward with this, depending on their timeline, we would have some investment in this area required.
Thank you. Council. Councillor Parslow?
Well, to be succinct, so I like the idea of regional trails. With what we have to deal with, I can't see participating in this, and we should let the PRRD know immediately. Our need for capital money to deal with existing things is so much that I don't see us supporting this at all. And I think we should be, in fairness to the regional district, make it clear and why.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
So I'll make a motion then, alternative number 3, which would decline the opportunity to partner with the PRRD and the Village of Pooskoopie to construct the connecting communities trails between Dawson Creek and Pooskoopie.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parslow. The only comment I would make is the trails connectivity had one or two options that were dependent on us doing something, and I don't know if the Trails Committee has other options that they're going to pursue potentially behind this, and but we should make that clear to them. I think that the options that have been presented to us clearly do not work in the amount of capital required for us to connect into their proposals.
Yeah.
Councillor Lexler?
Just one other further on that, and I concur with the recommendation put forward right now, just that we are in a position, as good of idea as this is, there's many good ideas that realistically sometimes we just can't afford at this point in our situation, but also we have a significant amount of money to reinvest in our existing trail as it sits today, and I think if we let them know that, look, it's our goal to focus on that part within the city boundaries, and if they find ways to move this project forward, they can probably count on us ensuring that the connectivity within the city of Dawson Creek is going to be one of the things we'll look at, because I don't think we can leave our path deteriorate, or why would we keep any of it out?
Yeah,
I mean, that would be my thought on that. So if they're looking for, are we committed to a trail system? Yes, we are, but our first priority has to be to maintain what we have in existence today, and there's significant cost to that associated.
Councillor Park?
Just for clarity, so that excludes the trail that's been closed because of erosion east of 8th Street.
I would hope one day we can continue to rebuild that within, that's a city I mean, I look at that, the connectivity, if they wanted to pursue that as something further out to the Encana Event Center and so on, but whether we're going to dead end our trail right there and call it a day, I would like to think we could continue within our city limits to maybe rehab that one day.
Well,
Go ahead.
isn't the $2.8 million estimate referring to that portion of the trail?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To your worship, just confirm with Russ.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So we're declining it at this moment because we don't have the funding.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Certainly not a priority.
You bet, yeah.
Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.3, we have report 19098 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our BC Transit 2019-20 annual operating agreement. Councillor Parsons.
I move the report 19098 from the Chief Financial Officer of the BC Transit 2019-2020 annual operating agreement be received. Further, Council approve entering into the 2019-2020 annual operating agreement between the City of Dawson Creek and BC Transit, effective April the 1st, 2019, and expiring March the 31st, 2020.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Comments? Duncan?
Through your worship, this is an annual request. It's part of a larger agreement, and this is for 1 year, as mentioned in the recommendation, expiring March 31st, 2020.
Thank you. Further discussion by council? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.4, we have report 19099 from the General Manager of Development Services, redevelopment permit 1904B, Rorison Land Development Limited.
I'd like to make a motion that we receive for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Duncan?
So through your worship, I'd like to ask if Kevin can maybe come up and
Sure.
just walk council through the report and answer any questions.
Good morning. So the report that you have in front of you, just give you a little bit of background. Mr. Rorson started a subdivision approximately back in 2014. There was, at that time of the application, it was applied for earlier than that. Late 2013, we had a bylaw change, so the application was under the old bylaw. Mr. Rorson worked on that for a period of time, and then it kind of sat dormant, so to speak, for a few years. We provided Mr. Rorson a letter in 2016 stating that there had been a new bylaw in place, the application had expired, and that he would need to reapply under the new bylaw, and that there would be certain things required. So last year, Mr. Orson came in, we talked about the process of moving forward. With some legal advice, it was determined that a development variance was the appropriate path. So we did bring a variance earlier this year to council, which was approved. But it was determined here recently that there was some miscommunication between myself and Mr. Rorson and the consultant engineers. And the variance that was approved at that time did not fully encapsulate everything that the developer was looking for. So we've put together a more comprehensive list, and that's what you'll see in front of you today. So I don't know if you would like me to walk through some of these issues or the items, or what exactly council maybe has questions regarding. But essentially, we are looking for the previous, just background on the previous DVP. The intent was to vary the infrastructure that was in the ground, the water, sewer, and storm sewer, and their alignments, because they didn't necessarily meet the bylaw. And that's what we believed we were looking for. And through some discussions, we've determined that there was more items that the developer was looking for. So.
Yep. Thank you. Kevin? Council? Councillor Javetkoff?
So these requirements that you've mentioned here, that there's a request to waive, were they not part of the original development plan? Like, for example, the requirement for quality control and insurance plans for the design, construction, and record keeping for infrastructure installed prior to this date of this permit. Was that not part of the original development plan?
No, so the updated bylaw that was done in 2013 requires that we have documented plans from consultant engineers of who's going to be providing those quality control plans and all that. So they were not part of that original plan.
So was there no concern about quality control with that original plan?
Yes, there's always concern about quality control, but is the developer's requirement to provide a consultant engineer and provide those reports. What we're asking for in the new bylaw is to have a document that clearly states who that consultant engineer is and what they're going to be responsible for.
So was it not clear in the original development plan the purpose of hiring an engineer, and like what was the engineer's role?
Yeah, obviously it's to provide quality control, but we want to have a document that clearly states who that person's going to be and what they're going to provide as part of that plan.
So the other one, and there's a number of them, but I don't want to go through every one of them here. There's quite a list. But waiving the requirement for an inspection and testing plan for infrastructure installed prior to the date of this permit.
Yes.
So was there no inspection and testing plan in the old development permit?
So that speaks to the infrastructure that's in the ground right now, the water, sewer, and storm. So the city does not have anything in its possession from the consultant engineer that states that that infrastructure has been installed according to the design, according to specifications, according to Northern Health requirements. Maybe it's obtainable, but at this point we do not have it. So at this point, the city has not accepted that infrastructure, and I wouldn't recommend accepting it until we have those documents.
So is this something that has to be waived in the new development, in the new bylaw, or is it a deficiency in the original development plan?
So we would require it either way, under the old bylaw or the new bylaw, but we do not have that at this point in time.
Just going through the list, I mean, there's a number of items that I would have assumed were in the original development plan. I know that the development plan, when it was originally approved, was comprehensive. I mean, it was everything that was thought of at the time was in there. So I guess this is why I'm kind of wondering about wanting to waive those, waive the new bylaws. I don't get the connection between the new bylaw and the old bylaw.
Okay, so the items that are listed, I think there's about 26 of them. We went through it with the consultant engineer prior to this coming to council to make clear of the items that they were not going, the intent was that they were not going to be able to give us. And so that's why they're here. So we checked in with them and said, is this, just to be clear, because the first time we had a miscommunication problem. So the second time, we sat with the consultant engineer and said, we went through item by item. Are you going to be able to give us this? Are you going to be able to give us this? And if they said no, or we don't think so, it went on the list. So that's just why it's there.
So another one is the cathodic protection and the thrust blocks. Were they not a requirement in the original bylaw?
Cathodic protection was not. Thrust blocks were, but again, that goes back to that we have no verification at this point from the consultant engineer to say that it was installed according to design. And the consultant engineer, when we spoke with them, spoke to the fact that they weren't sure they were going to be able to give us this information.
Councillor Lexham.
Your Worship, in looking to this, and I know that our city works hard with our developers to make sure we can see development occur in our city, and I think most developers, without question, want to do it and meet the obligations under the bylaws we have. This is a unique situation where a development started under an old bylaw, and there's a great deal to it. There's some issues that whether the lots were registered individually or as a whole that comes into play on the grandfathering of an old development versus the new bylaw. I know Mr. Rorson is here. Would it be worthwhile for council, and I think it takes a unanimous vote of the council members here, to maybe have a discussion together at this point to see if we can try and find a way to move this forward? I think everybody, including, I fully understand where Kevin's coming from. He is commissioned by us and hired by us to administer the bylaws as they're presented, and that's exactly what he's done here. I think there's a lot of questions from council saying, gee, how can we make this work? What do we need? Kevin has laid it out here. There may be some things, again, there may be some miscommunication between the developer's engineering firm or whatever, but I'm just throwing it out as a question. Would it be worthwhile to allow Mr. Rorson to sit with Kevin and have a discussion at this point for council prior to moving this forward?
So I did speak to Mr. Rorson prior to the thing, and he wasn't wanting to speak, but
Okay.
I'm going to leave it to Pat now if you want to speak. So council, it requires unanimous consent for council to allow the delegation to speak. Are those in favor? Opposed? Pat, you're welcome to join us. And morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So maybe I'll just continue, and Pat, thank you for coming. And it appears, and we've seen your development up there, it's well underway. We've got great new homes built up there. You want to look at an expansion. We're caught presently between an old bylaw and a new bylaw. Our staff have to follow the guidance of council in saying, here's your bylaw, council. I have to work with developers under this today. There seems to have been some communication issues. I heard Kevin say that we couldn't get an answer from your engineers, for example, saying what's in the ground, if I'm interpreting that correctly. Those are the things I need answers to, because I agree, you can't, the city could never inherit something and a couple of years down the road be in a position if something went sideways that the taxpayer of the city would be on the hook for that if they had accepted it. So to accept some, is there the thought that your engineers would be able to provide that, or is there some breakdown between what they're telling Kevin and maybe what your discussions are with them, would be my first question.
Okay, so first over to the health permit. First, the health permit is issued by Prince George, the health department, and it's not given to me, it's delivered to the city. Now I have gone back to them and they have given me a copy of the letter they sent in 2014 to the city. So the city has it somewhere, the letter. That's tells you how they want it laid out, how many meters that water has to be from sanitary and all the rest of it. After 2015, I changed engineers. I spoke with the engineer, Wayne Gore, who actually did the inspections on the installations and designed it. And he said there's a letter that went to the city saying that it was acceptable. He has all the pressure tests that were done, and were done in the fall of 2014. And then we had one area that we didn't get past, and we came back in the spring of 2015 and we completed the pressure testing on it, all to the city standards.
Okay.
So all the engineering reports we have.
Does that, and Kevin, I mean, this is a unique situation we find ourselves, do you have that, or is that where we're waiting, and is that part of what we're saying, hey, look, we want that, and we've been told we weren't going to get that?
So this is, again, a bit of the uniqueness of having one project and two consultant engineers. So we were speaking with the most recent one, which is Tryon, and they had told us at this point in time that we were likely not to get that information. Subsequently, Mr. Orson has spoke with the previous engineer, and he indicates that he is able to provide that. So what I know at the time is we were unable to locate it in the file. So if Mr. Gore can provide that to us, that would be great.
That would be a substantial difference from what we're discussing here today with not knowing what's in the ground, for instance, based on, okay.
Councillor Dubeka, or sorry, Councillor Lexstrom, were you done? Or
Well, no, I'll let others, and
Okay,
then I
go
have
ahead.
some other.
In addition to the issues that, like the reporting stuff from the original bylaw, we passed the motion previously to waive the new bylaw requirements. Now, there's a number of items in here that I think are related to the new bylaw. For example, the radius of the cul-de-sac, the sidewalk around the cul-de-sac. There's a number of, when you go through here, there's a number of conditions that seem to be in addition to the old bylaw. Have they been included in here? Like, my understanding was we basically went back to the original criteria for the development plan as far as street widths and sidewalk locations and that type of thing.
So you're speaking about the variance that was approved by council earlier this year?
Yeah.
So that variance that came forward was very succinct and asked for a variance on the offsets for water, sewer, and storm, i.e. where they're sitting within the road right away, and also the width of the road. So there was only about 4 or 5 items on there. It was not a variance of the entire bylaw. It was strictly a variance of those items. And that is where there was that miscommunication that I spoke about between myself, the developer, and the consultant engineer. And that's why we're back here, is that they have submitted a set of drawings that we have reviewed. And they have indicated that this is what we wish, this package that we've provided is what we'd like to build. So we've compared that to the new bylaw, developed this list, and that essentially forms the variance. So that's why we have a new list in front of you.
I'll just read it out for you, Councillor. The March 11th meeting, the request for variance, we reduced the minimum width of pavement from 10 to 9. That was the variance. Increased the minimum distance between property line and curb from 5 to 6. Increasing the minimum distance between water line and neighboring property line from 2.5 to 3.5. And increasing the minimum distance between storm line and neighboring property line from 7.5 to 10 meters. And that was as a result of, they indicate all of that infrastructure was in the ground at that point. So that was the March 11th variance.
So none of the items in here were covered off in that original variance.
That's correct.
Councillor Parsons.
So I think we have clarity on the issue, right? There was a communication breakdown. Council approved, as the list the mayor's just read, variances, but it seems there were far greater magnitude of variance in Pat's request. So I can accept communication breakdowns do happen. That's fine. We work to resolve those. The problem I have here is that, and I'd just like to know if my impressions are accurate, that we have other developments that are occurring in the community or have occurred where the new bylaw is or has been applied. Is that factually correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I think, to me, one of the aspects here is that the development for Dawson land development over the last 13 years or 10 years or whatever it's been ongoing has been done in stages as the marketplace has allowed. Infrastructure's been installed as the bylaw allowed, and now we're in this stage where we got some infrastructure in there, and we have a new bylaw that's creating this clunk now in terms of allowing the project to move forward for the development, for market valuation, and ensuring it's feasible. Us, staff, having a bylaw in front of them saying, look, we got to have adherence to these requirements that you guys are saying in, and here's why we need them. But certainly from my perspective, I get staff's perspective, but also get Mr. Roarson's perspective in terms of making an investment and having some installation of making, adhering to the old bylaw. And so there's some pieces in here that staff are saying, look, these are from our recommendation, these are non-starters, we've got to have this. From Mr. Roarson's perspective, look, I started this under this bylaw, and some of that stuff is in there. I would like to suggest that I think there's a way for us to move this forward in a way that we engage with Mr. Roarson as a subcommittee of saying, okay, what are the non-starters? And I'll get that from council. What are the issues for Mr. Roarson in that? And we need to work to find a solution. This is important development to our community, has been an important development to our community, has been an important business person in our community that's allowed the development of it, and I'd like to make that as a way to move it forward. Go ahead, Pat.
Mr. Mayor, we started in 2002, is when we really started on the subdivision. And as we've worked through about 110 acres or whatever it is, we're down to the final portion of it. In 2004, we entered into the subdivision plan that we have, and which states the rules of that day. We're now to a point where if you incorporate, if we try to incorporate the old bylaw into the new one, it's just not feasible to do. What we need to do is go back to the old bylaw as it stands and say, okay, let's incorporate a few of the items from the new one into it and get the subdivision done. Feasibly, you cannot build a subdivision under these bylaws and sell for the prices that lots sell for today. These are done in Kelowna and Penticton. The lots sell for $180,000 to $225,000. Land prices are, $500 a lot here, actually to $20,000 there. But there's no margins here for that. And so you leave a developer, and I believe you have some trying it. How many times have you gone broke? We still haven't finished it because you can't do it. And so what I'm asking council is to go back to the original bylaw and let's make a few modifications to it, to the original subdivision plan, and move from there.
Okay, thank you. Blair? Councillor Luxton?
Thanks. All right. And thank you. On this issue, I think everybody is in agreement. We would like to try and find a way to move this forward. There's obviously, people have the right to look at what's going on up there. Some people have expressed concerns. Is the water flow going to be looked after? Certainly we've heard from you, yes, it will be. We have to make sure that we can relay that information and how it's dealt with to the people that have raised concerns with properties that exist and so on. I think that's a doable issue. I have a couple of questions, Your Worship, that may be on the legal side, and I don't think we can do that under our council agenda based on an open meeting. To get those questions answered before a decision is made on this issue primarily, I would like to move that we move this into an in-camera portion of council so that those questions can be asked. Certainly come out of council, I can't predetermine where it'd be, but with the hope that we find a path forward that we can have our administration work with the developer to make this work. But I would so move at this point. I would like to move it to an in-camera discussion based on a couple of technical or legal questions I have.
Thank you. Brenda?
Yes, just
appropriate?
a motion would need to be passed to that
All right.
effect.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So this will be brought back after our closed meeting later this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Javecka?
Just a question, is it possible to have Mr. Roarson in the meeting to discuss these specifics? I agree with you that, we need to come to a conclusion. But there's obviously two sides to every one of these issues, and I can see us having to go through each one of these and discussing them and putting them in or out. But we need both parties, I believe, to do that.
I think that the aspect of legal may create but we'll get some advice from our administration before we go into closed, and if possible, then we will. Duncan?
So through your worship, the grounds is for legal purposes. We can't discuss each item within the closed meeting. That has to happen in an open meeting, develop decisions. And for the appropriate grounds and that legal discussion, Mr. Orson can't take part in that.
Good. Thank you. All those in favor? We did vote?
I think so.
All right, good. Thank you. So next, we're going to move on now to our reports and finish those off. Our next report, 7.5, we have report 192 from the Deputy Corporate Officer, appointment of bylaw enforcement officer. Councillor Parslow?
I move that report number 19-102 from the Deputy Corporate Officer, reappointment of bylaw enforcement officers, be received. Further, that Victoria Witterbroad be appointed as a bylaw enforcement officer for the City of Dawson Creek. And further, that the appointments of Brent Newman, Gary Fellows, Sherry Bonnycastle, Devon Bacon and Katie Heat will be rescinded. And further, that the following previous appointments be reconfirmed. Sean Henrichson, City of Dawson Creek; Bill Darnborough, City of Dawson Creek; Wendy Davies, SBCA; Morton Jacobs, SBCA; Sarah Harris, SBCA.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Lexstrom, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And report 19-092 from the Corporate Officer regarding our policy review. Councillor Giueco.
Move the report number 19-0092 from the Corporate Officer, re-2019 policy review be received for discussion. Further, that the proposed policy amendments be dealt with individually.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Parslow. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. So we'll go through the first one. Go ahead.
So the policy on walkways, considering that we now have a policy on trespasses basically stemming from the Willowbrook Chamberlain Park area, I think that we should be including that same policy or a similar policy regarding walkways. Walkways are, city property, and we've got a number of examples where there's been walkways used by adjacent landowners for various purposes, and some that haven't, and some that haven't been maintained, and it's kind of a mix. I would like to see us adopt the same policies for walkways as we do with in the Chamberlain.
Okay. So your motion is that we would refer to staff to prepare a report outlining the pros and cons of amending the policy?
Yes.
With sufficient information regarding the proposed amendment?
Yes.
Thank you. So item A, moving as a motion, seconded. Councillor Parslow, discussion? Councillor Lexstrom?
Just on that, if we're going to ask administration to put a comprehensive report together on that, I think there are probably, and this goes back 20 plus years, I remember back in the 90s we discussed the issue of walkways, and some in our city are used, others are not used. I think as they were first initiated, they were probably based around city planning at the time. That planning has been altered over the last number of decades. But there's probably a legitimate issue here that some of those walkways are no longer needed, but I can tell you there are some that are certainly needed, that access parks, cut from roadways through versus having children walk along roads. So is that going to be part of this comprehensive? And it seems to me like a great deal of work here, but just asking if that's what would be included in that motion, Paul.
Well, we have some that are required, some that are actually being used.
Yes.
We've got them fenced off and they're used and they're maintained. We have some that there's probably no use in the foreseeable future or in the future. Yeah. So it's a matter of dealing with those, and we've already got the policy. The Chamberlain Park policy is there, so it's a matter of applying it. This report, I don't see it as being a huge amount of work. I mean, it'll be some. there's probably only a few walkways that are involved.
Okay.
So, and I mean, I'm not, the policy, it's not like, you know, there's other workload that takes precedence, but if we have it on the books,
We're working on it, yeah.
like I wouldn't put this ahead of the fiscal stuff.
Duncan?
So through your worship, this walkway policy, as it sits today, it outlines a process if somebody would like to purchase a walkway. It has some language around the applicants approaching council and approaching the city with a petition signed by the neighbors. It talks about the adjacent neighbors purchasing the walkway policy. You know, the only concern would be the trespass encroachment is really focused on where there's infrastructure in place, whereas the walkway policy is really specific to walkways, and it's outlines opportunities if somebody would like to purchase that. So I'm trying to wrap my head around whether we're engaging in a review of the walkways and finding walkways that we might sell, or whether we're just combining the walkway policy into the trespass encroachment policy and utilizing the criteria within the trespass encroachment policy that exists. I'm not sure what the request is.
Go ahead.
Specifically trespass. Walkways that have trespassers on them, the situation should be corrected.
Okay.
Basically the same approaches were taken with Chamberlain.
So just for clarification, so the intent of the recommendation is that we will review all walkways, and any walkway that has an encroachment, we will approach them to either remove it or buy it. Is that correct?
This also follows into the land sale policy. These are very complex policies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of thought go into them, and there's a number of them that overlap each other. So you need to deal with, first identify the trespasses, and then how are we dealing with them through the Chamberlain Park policy. And then, if there's some options for purchase, then you go to the land sale policy. So
research the walkways and find trespasses.
Find where the trespass issues are, and basically that's the start of it.
Okay. So through your worship, that would be a little larger than just changing the policy or rewriting the policy. That would be some work. I don't know exactly how much at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Lexman?
I guess I'm going to follow up now that that was somewhat cleared up for me. My understanding is the Chamberlain policy and anything such as that comes to us is complaint driven, not initiated by council to go out and look for it. So if we're going to, I understand the intent of this, Paul, 100%, but I've always understood that whether it's an unsightly premise, whether it is trespass, it has come as a result of a complaint, traditionally from a neighbor somewhere in the region. We're now saying that council is going to take the initiative to say, we're going to have a look at our walkways. If there's trespasses, we'd like those dealt with, which I don't have a problem with, because I also think we should look at unsightly premises as well versus just complaint driven, because we have a lot of them out there. So is that the intent though? Because it does vary our own policy just a little bit on that, based on the complaint driven process versus let's take an initiation here from council's directive and say we want to see this.
So when we talked about trespasses and the issues we went through with Chamberlain, I believe we changed the policy for trespass that we don't need, it doesn't have to be complaint driven. That staff were going to monitor, any trespasses on city land, and we didn't need to have a complaint. They're not complaint driven for that type of thing.
Duncan?
So through your worship, we did not change our policy. Council directed or asked, and I have to go back and see if there was an actual resolution, that we have a lot of individuals within our community that work for the city, and they are all over the city in different areas, whether it be parks or buildings or bylaw. And if they see new development that appears to be in contravention of a bylaw, to report that to the building official or the bylaw officer. But that was really under construction and something new, as opposed to going back retroactively and looking at pre-existing.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm okay with the motion, Your Worship, but I just want to make sure we're clear. I mean, if this is going to take some work, we're going to look at our walkways. If there's trespasses, we'll get a report back, and then at the end of the day, we'll make decisions based on that. I'm okay.
It's a big...
Councillor Javetkov?
I think, you know, we've started the process with Chamberlain, and it applies to other parks as well. There was one mentioned at the meeting the other night in Crescent Park. I think it's a job that we have to work through to try and clean up the mess. I mean, it's evolved over the years, I think, because of this complaint-driven requirement. But I was just applying it in my mind to Crown land, and if that was a complaint-driven process on Crown land, we would have trespasses all over the place. Anyways, that's another issue, the complaint-driven aspect, how it applies to trespasses and unsightly properties and, you know, all of that stuff. I think we have to deal with that too, and I don't remember if I submitted that policy for review, or I don't know if it's still on the list.
Yeah, I'd have to look. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion?
Complaining.
You ready for the question, Council? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Land sale, item 2.
So this policy, and like I try to apply it, we went through this process on a walkway where an individual wanted to purchase the land, but when you calculate the cost of it, it was thousands of dollars for a chunk of land that's 5 feet wide and 100 feet long. We have to, I think that we have to incorporate into the policy the savings that we would get for financial for the city by disposing of that land and not having the maintenance and the liability on into the future. So and I don't know if it's a charter requirement that all of those costs have to be paid, but to me it makes sense. I mean, if I have an item that is costing me money to keep each year and I want to sell it, I'm going to be considering in the value of it what it's costing me.
Yeah.
So, you know, that sort of aspect of handling the disposal.
Okay. So your recommendation, same then as item A?
Yes.
Thank you. By way of a motion, so that we'll have a staff report outlining pros and cons of amending the policy with sufficient information regarding the proposed amendment. Do you have, you're making that by way of a motion? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parslow? Discussion? Councillor Lexstrom?
I'm unclear. Maybe I'm just slow here today, but when I look at our land sale policy, we can post any parcel how we want it. If it doesn't sell within the 30 days, it'll revert back, or we've had no offers. That's covered in there. Is it, and again, I asked for clarification, Paul, on this, if I live in a home and I have a walkway beside me that we know is not used, for example, hasn't been used for 20 years, but the homeowner says, hey, look, I'd be interested. We don't maintain those now with the city. So let's just say I go, geez, I'm interested in taking that on. You're not suggesting that it would be at the city's cost that we would survey that out and put it onto the property of the person that's interested, are you? Like, I can't think that it would be good for the taxpayer of the city to fund somebody to increase their lot size. That just doesn't...
I'm saying it should be a consideration. The cost to the city of holding on to that land, and we do maintenance. I mean, we have to maintain them. So there is a cost to holding on to that land, and that should be a consideration when the purchase price is determined. So, no, you wouldn't do all the work and give them the land for free, but instead of charging $5,000 for a piece of land 5 feet by 100 feet, you may want to reduce it because by keeping it, you're incurring maintenance costs and.
Okay.
For administration through to Brenda or Duncan, when we sell property, we have to sell it at market value. Brenda?
Yeah, through your worship. Market value, there can be other considerations.
Okay.
Of value other than monetary. So what Councillor Jabetkov is speaking about can be considered.
Okay.
But I believe the cost that we include in these policies is the actual costs of the city. So that would be the survey, the land title costs. Those would be costs that would need to be covered.
Okay, thank you.
By who?
By the purchaser.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parzal?
Just to re-emphasize, my understanding behind this is essentially every potential addition piece of land, the circumstances will vary, right? There's the area and the cost and so on, but in no case would the city be paying for land to be sold to somebody else without recovering all the full costs. That's how I looked at it. But if it's...
I'm good with that.
Okay. That's how I understand. Is that how you understand?
Yeah, I mean, I would just like some consideration for, the future liabilities and cost to the city, including, and there's other factors. I mean, it may be a surveyor that wants to buy the land and he's going to survey it on his own. So the city isn't incurring the cost. So,
Good. Thank you. Any further questions, further comments? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And finally, item 3 is the trespass encroachment.
So this is, I'll just read out my comments there. The city needs to work toward eliminating trespasses on city property. Allowing trespasses that occurred prior to the policy is unfair to taxpayers. Provisions can be made in the policy to accept certain trespasses depending on impacts to property. Trespasses on walkways, parks, and road allowances must be viewed as unacceptable regardless of the date of occurrence. And I guess that deals with this notion of having a complaint on older trespasses. Trespasses are trespasses. It's unfair to the taxpayers to have somebody utilizing city property for free. If it's wide open, if it's, if trespasses are acceptable, then I guess maybe we should all do them. I don't know. But to me, we started on Chamberlain. I think it was a really good initiative. We've put a lot of time and effort into it, and I think we've come up with a standard approach that we can apply now to other situations.
Thank you. And your motion then would be that we would do the same, amend the policy with sufficient information regarding a proposed amendment?
Yes.
Do you have a seconder? For a second, Councillor Barsall. Discussion. Councillor Earl.
So, and keeping in mind, I'm kind of coming into this with fresh eyes, Your Worship, as a first-term councillor, but looking over the timeline.
You get to wear that one for about 2 more months, and then you're in.
Well, no, just looking over the timeline of the Chamberlain Park. It was about a 2-year process from the first complaint to where we are now and having a policy ready to go. And as one of the people at the Chamberlain Park meeting this last Thursday noted, there are other instances of trespass in town. Given, I'm just wondering how big a ball of wax this is and how much staff time we have to dedicate to this particular issue at this moment, given we're trying to get ahead of the budget. So I'd just like some advice from staff on logistically, are we asking too much at the moment? Is this going to be more than we can, are we biting off more than we can chew at this time, or is it, yeah.
Duncan, we had a report presented when we got into Chamberlain, I think, and we did a bit of an inventory of the number of encroachments we identified at that time in the city, so maybe you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so through your worship, that was some time ago, and I don't know if Kevin remembers the number of possible encroachments, keeping in mind anytime we identify a trespass, whether it be a walkway or a park or wherever, at some point a survey is required to clarify that it is in fact, and it's not just our GIS off by a couple feet just because it's satellite or whatnot. So I think through that preliminary, very high level review, it was over 200 different types. Some minor, some structural.
So you have that wrapped up in a week or two? Or?
Definitely.
Councillor
So,
Jabecka?
this is not the action of going out and doing this tomorrow. This is a policy review. Like, I don't know if you remember, Brenda asked us to look at the policies to review them. That's what we're doing. So the policy will be reviewed, and if it's adopted, then, you know, you strike out. Like I say, I think the fiscal issues right now are the highest priority, but this workload I don't think should be forgotten. I mean, obviously Chamberlain was forgotten since 1978. We don't want to go through that again, I don't think. So.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Parsley?
Well, if I remember correctly, I was relying on Councillor Jabacroft, as were you, with your experience, to review all these policies on our behalf. So I left it, and so did Jeremy. To you.
Well, I was wondering if I made a mistake.
But so my only comment in regards to this, I have absolutely no issue whatsoever with the aspect of having the review of the policy around encroachments, but remembering that report and knowing the prominence of the encroachments, some, you know, are significant and others minor and may not even be deliberate. Somebody builds a fence and not realize, we don't even know if they're accurate because our GIS. And we're asking staff to do some more work, and that's the capacity of staff is the only one that pops for me. And then at the end of this, if we have that kind of significance of encroachments, and we say, yeah, we need to do something about it, but we don't have the capacity to do anything about it because we only have 2 bylaw enforcement officers, and if we adopt a policy to say we're going to do something about it, I guess that's my concern. We've got adding work onto administration, and then adding more capacity of work onto the staff. So that's my worry about this one, because we know this one's bigger than a bread box. Councillor Parcel?
Yes, I agree with your sentiments. But again, this is policy. We are empathic towards staff, I believe, as a council, and we would make the necessary. I mean, sometimes there's been things on the books for a couple of years. That's fine, but this will take a lot of work. But I don't see why we should prevent us from expressing our will, but recognizing that this is lower down in the totem pole, if that's the appropriate expression to use. It's not appropriate. If it's lower hierarchy, because in totem poles the hierarchies at the bottom. You know. So anyway, I think we should press forward with expressing our will, but recognize that implementation is another question.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? You ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Good job, Councillor Jabecka. Appreciate you bringing those forward.
Discussion going there.
8, bylaws, official committee plan amendment bylaw number 4418 for 1225 113th Avenue for consideration of third reading and adoption. Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Javetkov, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Zoning amendment bylaw 1903 bylaw 4419 for consideration of third reading and adoption. Councillor Javetkov, second. Councillor Parslow, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.3, we have report 19097 from the city planner regarding zoning amendment bylaw 1904, which is bylaw 4421 2019 for Ascension Builders for 1604 and 1600 and 1604 102nd Avenue for consideration of first two readings. Councillor Luckstrom.
So move.
Second, Councillor Javetkov. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And report 19103 from the corporate officer regarding local area service and establishment bylaws. Councillor Parslow.
I move that report number 19097 from the city planner, rezoning amendment 19-04, bylaw number 4421 2019 be received. Further, zoning amendment 1904, bylaw number 4421 2019, Ascension Builders, 1600 to 1604 102 Avenue, rezoning from C2 to RM2 be given first and second reading.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl, discussion. Duncan, you want to give any update?
Through your worship, I would ask Kevin if there's any additional information.
So, through your worship, these properties zone commercial, and there's going to want to see some form of residential construction on it, and so this builders come forward and looking at doing some form of multi-family, which fits within the OCP.
Oh, sorry, we're on the local area service. Sorry, Kevin.
I think the motion was from the previous report.
Yeah, we sort of voted on it.
Yeah.
We were in discussion on the previous
I just
motion.
wanted to see if the mayor was paying attention.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dale, I made a mistake.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
We made the motion on the wrong. We did 8.3 already.
Yeah.
This was on 8.4.
Yeah.
Councillor Javetkov.
I'll move with
The local service.
adoption on 19-103.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Parslow. Councillor Earl, you had a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
Seconding.
Now I can speak to this if you
Okay,
like.
go ahead.
So through the LAS and Brenda's worked through this process, really we were waiting on ministry approval. There is a quashing period, which is really an opportunity for somebody to say that we haven't followed or met our legislative requirements. After that 30-day period, we will request a certificate of approval and we will move forward. These projects and these components of these projects have been included in the tenders, which have been awarded already and can be changed in order to include them. So it was an alternative in there.
Thank you. Further comments, further questions on council?
I'm pleased that they passed.
Yeah, very good.
Great.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mayor's business. So first item, Peace Williston Reservoir Advisory Committee. It's an advisory committee set up, I don't know, 20 plus years ago by BC Hydro on communities impacted by the Peace Williston Reservoir. And so the meeting was a week and a half ago in Dawson Creek, and we hosted the committee here. And it's business on updates and information related to BC Hydro and any aspects around the reservoir and communities impacted by the reservoir. The biggest impact that a community that's impacted by this reservoir is Mackenzie. The reservoir operates within the elevations of 2150 feet and 2210 is full reservoir. Because of the dryness of the last couple of years in northeastern British Columbia and the East region, the reservoir they get their license from the Water Utility Act, and they have to maintain that reservoir at that minimum levels. Why it's so critical to Mackenzie is the access for industry, for the pulp mills, the lumber mills, and getting the wood in and out of the reservoir. And so this last 2 years are dangerously close to getting below 2150, and in fact it was just at 2150 this spring before spring freshet hits and reservoir starts to fill. But they have been concerned about it, and it's just because of the dryness of the weather over the last 2 years, both in terms of snowfall was normally running around 92%, and a lack of summer moisture and spring moisture. And the big one is springtime rains, which really significantly impact and help filling of the reservoir. The other thing they talked about is they're building a new it's called the Kelly Lake Capacitor Reservoir, piece to Kelly Lake, and Kelly Lake is down by, I think it's down around Clinton in that area, and they're increasing the capacity of supply of power down there by some new capacitor stations that they're planning to construct that will maximize the flow of energy. And like any line, it reduces its capacity over the years as a result of aging, and so they're looking to update that, and it's a fairly major project that they're undertaking to do that. So those were probably the two big projects, the two big topics at our Williston Reservoir Advisory Committee this couple of weeks ago. I met with the folks from TransCanada, and one of the ladies was on the phone from Calgary, and she's responsible for the socioeconomic impact environmental management plan. They call it SEEMP. Any project that goes on has to have what's called a SEEMP plan that engages communities and areas that are impacted by construction of projects. We talked about the purpose of the meeting was Coastal GasLink's project. They are kicking off the project in a fairly significant way. Camps are now being to be situated and established in south of Chetwynd. There'll be another camp deep in the mountains that'll be for the drilling crews that will be operating going through the mountains. And because they're so far away from where the kickoff of the project from Ground Birch in through south of Chetwynd into the Pine Pass area, they're going to need a camp deep in the mountains to be able to handle. It's probably a 60 or 80 man camp. There'll be another 600 or 800 person camp south of Chetwynd in the Sikanka area. So construction of those camp facilities are the establishment of them are underway, and clearing is underway. The two main prime contractors for the north two sections will be Solaris, Murphy, and Macro, both out of Fort St. John, who have the first two major phases of the project. And so it is moving forward, contrary to, I think, what a lot of the perception is, that there's the resistance to the projects. The projects are and is moving forward. So it's very good to get an update from them. And again, we stress the importance for them of engaging with us as a local community, for our business community, where and if that service of our community is required. They likely will not use us for their water or sewer, as most of them do, but I wanted to make sure that if we are going to be engaged and they do see that need, that they engage us early, so we understand that and understand the implications of engaging with our business community through their subcontractors. So it's good. It was a really good session. We had last week a couple of meetings with community groups, starting the engagement process with the aspect of understanding the user groups and the users of our facilities, arts, culture, recreation, so that we can start to build that business plan and that business case for understanding the need for operating costs for our services. That council has provided that direction, and so we've had two separate meetings last week with the consultant that's been hired to start to put that business information together, and we're getting the feedback back, and it's been very positive so far in terms of that response. So we're looking forward to having that by the end of the month, and begin then to analyze and understand the users of our facilities, where they are, what they are, and how we can move that forward in the discussions with the Peace River Regional District. Kicked off BC Tourism Week, I think, last week, and there's a really fun event at the Tourist Information Centre, the old train station, and had some cake and a little celebration, and the staff were there, and it's always fun to engage with the tourists coming through our community, and the tourism season is upon us, and Kids from one of the schools did a great job of dressing up as be a tourist in their own community, and so we had a lot of fun, and again, recognizing how important tourism is to us and our business community in the next coming months. Laverne and I joined Citizens on Patrol last year, and it hit us at the annual general meeting, the appreciation dinner that Southeast Crime Prevention Organization has, and that's Rural Crime Watch, Crime Stoppers, and Citizens on Patrol are the 3 organizations under that umbrella group. And so we joined. It was alarming to me that we only had 7 members in the city of Dawson Creek as Citizens on Patrol. And so we joined, and I talked, Mayor Bernier was there at the same evening, so Mike and Valerie joined, and MLA Bernier, sorry. And thank you. And so it was their annual general meeting the other night, and they're invigorated with the Rural Crime Watch and Citizens on Patrol and Rural Crime Watch, and we're very pleased to be a part of it and look to continue to raise the profile of those organizations as volunteers in our region and community doing the work of helping keep our community safer. There's a new organization that's kicked off, and it's within our local physicians group, and they've formed the Southeast Division of Family Practice. So it's Tumbler Ridge, Chetwynd, Dawson Creek, and they've formed an organization with the Division of Family Practice working in partnership with Northern Health, under Northern Health's wing, and it's building health services. So I was the first meeting I was able to go at. They had a meeting previously in March, and we've been engaged with them obviously over the Southeast Health Society, and the Bolterice House was one initiative, but it's really good to know about, understand doctor recruitment, nursing initiatives. So I was at the meeting last week with them, and one of the presentations we got was on immunization and the importance of immunization and the issues around immunization. And the public health folks were talking to the docs about immunization and the importance of it. And I never knew this, but it was a really great nugget, that immunization is critical, really critical, to people who have their babies that aren't able to be immunized and are vulnerable to infectious diseases because they can't be immunized until they reach 6 months, 12 months, or 24 months. And it was the light bulb went off for me in terms of, holy, if somebody makes the decision not to immunize and their child or somebody gets measles, that's not critical for an adult. Who it's critical to is a baby or a child that has not yet been immunized. That realization was never there for me, so it was really glad to hear that presentation and raise the awareness of it, and I think it's an important topic, and certainly it seems to be more and more prevalent these days because we're seeing the incidence of measles more and more out there, and people are making the decisions to immunize or not. But to me, that was a aha moment. Anyway, I'm really pleased to see the docs, the Division of Family Practice, engaging with, and Chetwynd, Dr. Helm, and those folks were on, and from Tumbler Ridge as well as Chetwynd, and Dr. Venter has really been the lead with Dr. Eddie and Rue, who is the Chief of Staff for our Dawson Creek area. So it was really good. We held our open house last Thursday night, I think, with the Chamberlain Park issue, and that's moving forward. We had a great public consultation meeting with the residents and interested folks who were there. Gave them kind of the outcomes of some of the stuff that council now has been working on and moving forward with in regards to that Chamberlain Park issue and initiative. Outlined about 4 different proposals or options for residents who may want to consider being either removing their encroachment or infrastructure, leasing the property, purchasing the property. So anyway, we've now put that forward to the residents. We're looking for their feedback now, and then hopefully by within the next month we'll have it in front of council for council to make their final kind of direction decision on that issue down there and the issue of the encroachments in the park. And it was very well attended, and really got some great discussion from the residents and input, and so we look forward to getting that feedback back from them. And to me, that's what it should be. We engage with our residents and those that are interested and seek their input before council makes that final determination and decision on it.
It was the Adopt a Park.
And there was an Adopt a Park. There was 4 options in there, yes. Yeah. Northern Lights convocation ceremonies were held on Friday. I attended on behalf of council, and I don't know how many students, but there was, I would guess there was probably in the area of close to 150, I would say, through all the various aspects of the college, both from the educational side of it and the advanced education, as well as the trades. And I was really wanting to be up there shaking the hands of the nurses and giving them a hug and telling them Dawson Creek's a great place to live and work. I think there's about 10 LPNs that have graduated, and that, as a health sciences area, is a really important one. But the trades as well, the millwrights and the carpenters and the aircraft maintenance engineers was a huge class of them. And so it just really hits you when you see how important that trades training center and the college is to our community and region and building those opportunities for their residents. Today at council we had a delegation in regards to a dog park proposal, and we need to bring that back for direction.
Well, I was prepared to make a motion that we grant them access use on a temporary basis to the Newby Park.
Okay. Second? Have a second, Councillor Lexman. Discussion?
The reason I suggested Newby Park is that the Barbary Park is well used, I understand. Councillor Wilbur said last meeting I was actually seated here, was that she's observed many baseball groups playing there. And I know the Frisbee golf, which I'm just delighted to see those people in action, they use it. So I just think the other park is less used and might therefore be, as it's going to be a temporary, the better one to choose.
Okay.
That's my rationale.
Thank you. So Councillor Earl and then Councillor Lexman. Go ahead.
Just following through, and I guess part of my hope would be that we would ensure we follow through, although I would concur, I think Newby Park would be the place for it. I would like to make sure we talk to the school to make sure they aren't using, I know it's going to be temporary, but on an ongoing basis, I'm just not sure whether they use that Newby Park more than we would see Chamberlain used, for example. If we choose a park and dedicate a park and we find out the other one is less used, that's my only concern. I'm happy with either one of them and I would concur. My guess is that Newby Park is, but if it turns out through you, your worship, to administration that either one of those parks, this one is reflecting Newby, but if it was used more heavily than, say, the 15th Chamberlain Park, then maybe it might be a consideration to have a brief discussion to see which is a better park to use.
So, through your worship, I would suggest maybe putting forward some notice of intent and sending something to the school district and maybe some of the other groups. My understanding is there may be some informal users that we're not aware of just because they don't book it or they show up in the evenings and utilize it as an overflow space. That would be something just to put something out on our website or maybe on Facebook and maybe out to the school district to say, you know, who are these users. Insurance is something else that came up during the discussion, and essentially if they don't have insurance, then it falls on our insurance and we are liable.
Councillor Parslow?
I'd be quite willing to amend my motion that we give notice of intent.
Yeah.
All right.
I appreciate your comments.
Councillor Javeka?
So we would ask them to have insurance then?
If that's what council wishes, yes.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, so, you know, all dogs are wonderful and none of them bite or anything, but just in the case that you get a dog that attacks a child or kills somebody's little miniature poodle that cost $5,000, like, I don't think we should be carrying the responsibility for that.
Okay. Further discussion?
That would be looked at as well, I'm assuming, Your Worship.
Duncan?
So through your worship, if this motion passed, we would bring back some information regarding the comments we received and maybe some recommendations in those areas.
Do we, so do we require people who are using them informally today, baseball or that, do we require them to have insurance before they use it?
So most
Informally?
Sorry, through your worship, like the school district would if it were a group of friends, no.
Ball diamond, the ball users, if they go in there informally? And
So ball has insurance, right? If it is something that they are dropping in and
Ball
using.
aren't using it though.
Pardon me?
Ball are using it infrequently and informally, right?
My understanding is they may or may, I don't know.
So we don't know who's using them today. We don't know if they have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a volunteer group who now we decommissioned 3 ball diamonds, Barbary, Newbie, and Frank Ross, because we didn't have enough ball diamonds. And now we have a user group who has said, we want to use a park for a purpose that we've heard and seen has been a big demand. And we've got a group that's put together a structure. It's no cost to the city. Brenda?
Yeah, through your worship, if a portion of city land is put aside for a specific user group, then they would be required for insurance. But if it's just general public, then it's the city's insurance.
But what I'm hearing is we're putting these ball diamonds aside for the ball users. That's why we don't want them in, we're putting them in the one that's the least used. But we don't know that. Councillor Lex.
I guess just following through on that, there's 2 things. One, whether it isn't the ball users, I'm saying whether it is an evening group of kids or friends that go out to use, which one is the least used, which then we can direct for the people that want to put the dog park. I think it would be a better fit that way. Insurance-wise, I don't know the legalities on that. If we authorize a dog park and somebody is bitten at that dog park, who's on the hook? I'm going to guess city insurance is on the hook. I don't know what other areas do, and that I would look forward to if you come back to say, look, there's dog parks in other communities. It's covered under the municipal insurance program that we have generally, based on probably not a lot different than if a park is running in the park behind my house and bites a child. At some point, somebody's going to be on the hook. Joint and several liability is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Councillor Parslow?
Interesting discussion, because insurance is a quagmire, but you know, right now, as I understand from Brenda's comment, is that people who use the park in general, that's our problem. So the dog bite occurs in the heart of Kin Park. That's our problem, I suppose, if there are any problems, because where are we giving the dog park society exclusive use of Newbie Ball Diamond? I don't think we are. No. We're saying that's a dog park. You set up your disposal bins and your bags, but that's where it is. But I don't think that if I wanted to go into that Ball Diamond, I can still go into it. It's not set aside under lock and key, so I wouldn't worry about the insurance thing in this instance.
I think I think we send a notice of intent out. We'll see what feedback we get, and then administration will bring back that issue in terms of with Councillor Kemp, who's leading this, to say here's some of the components that we need to consider it as it relates to insurance or other use or whatever. Good. Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We had the school district here with the after-school athletic instruction program. And so Duncan, my understanding is they have the funding. They want to leverage Parks and Rec expertise and staff and helping to develop program and provide that instruction. And that's at no cost to our city resident taxpayer.
So through your worship, I believe Shantae maybe has had more of the discussion, but Ross is familiar. Ross, do you have enough information now to comfortably say this is support we can provide and it's fully funded?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, we have had some ongoing discussions with the school district. They have they have $40,000 which they've received through the provincial program, which they would turn over to us. We've done some preliminary work in terms of budget. It's about, for staffing and the necessary resources, it's about $16,000 for the art program and another $16,000 for the arts and the physical literacy program. So well within the dollars that we would need to host the program. I think the program ticks a lot of our own boxes. It's it's a good partnership. It really revolves around healthy, active communities, which we are trying to promote as we speak. So I would say it's a win-win in this case.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Need to be refreshed about this, but do we not charge a 10% administration fee for this, like we do with other outside groups?
Duncan?
So we have started charging some administration fees. Many of our parks programs and rec programs are subsidized and are not full cost recovery. But if that's something council would like to do, we could look at what that cost would be.
Yeah. Okay. So Councillor Lexstrom and Councillor Javetka?
Do you need a motion? I was
Yeah,
going
we need to get a motion.
Your Worship, that we move ahead to enter into a cooperation agreement or whatever that agreement would be with the school district to deliver this program in cooperation with them at full cost recovery to the city.
Okay. Second? Councillor Parslow, discussion? Councillor Javetka?
I just wondered about the advantages or to me, if they're paying the full price, why not just hire if they want to hire those individuals that are working in our parks program or rec program, just hire them outside of the city. I didn't understand the advantage to them.
Duncan?
So through your worship, I mean, we can make some assumptions. There are collective agreements and there are other areas within, we're already operating. We have that skill set. It would be an extension of some of our existing casuals, whereas they would be creating something from scratch, essentially, as initial conversations, very high level.
Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I was going to say that I thought that they would also express consistency of getting people for not the art component, but more the physical activity component. So using our staff, consistent face, expertise, it strengthens the program.
Yeah. Good. Further discussion, comments? You ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And then the last item was the Cal Tire Integra Tire Fountain Tire burnout concrete pad at the event center, because if anybody's going to benefit from this baby, it's going to be the tire shop.
I'd like to move that we allow for this concrete pad on the understanding that it's fully funded by them and it will be maintained by them.
Thank you. And seconded?
For discussion.
Councillor Earl, and discussion. Duncan, I just want your...
Yeah, so and I've mentioned this maybe to a couple of councillors. This is a great opportunity. This competition can deteriorate your pavement. Concrete would be great. Just the location. We'd like to work with the group on the location, as if there is a future replacement of that parking lot, we don't want to, create any roadblocks to drainage, etc. as a result of the grading. You would have to build everything around that concrete pad. And so we'd like that opportunity to work with them and move it somewhere where we know that grading maybe isn't going to change in the future.
Yeah. Good.
So be it.
Further discussion? Further comments? Anyone? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And the last item, 9.2, I had a memo presented to council, and this was further direction from the presentation of the delegation we had from the Rotary Club in regards to the walking trail. And council directed me and administration to meet with them. So we met with Joe and Dennis following it up, and so they request, and I presented that now in the way of a motion, that council authorize the Rotary Clubs of Dawson Creek to complete the targeted repairs and replacements along the Dawson Trail from 15th Street to 17th Street, liaising with our city staff. And further, that council authorized the Rotary clubs to use the City of Dawson Creek crack filling machine to complete crack filling along the entire Dawson Trail, liaising with staff. So the purpose of the motion is that there's some targeted areas that were identified between 15th Street and 17th Street. We have a crack filling machine that we understand out at the airport we don't maybe use as much or do, but they want to be able to use that to facilitate some maintenance of crack filling and sealing the trail and along the entire length of it. So that was the direction and discussion we had. Duncan, you want to speak to that before I?
Yeah, so through your worship, the tar pots we currently use, but intermittent, and there's an opportunity that they could use that as well when we're not using it. So we work with them on that.
Okay. So by way of a motion, we'll put that forward. Second, Councillor Parslow. Discussion, Councillor Kemp. You ready to vote?
Well, I think it's great. Those trails are lovely. They do need the work done on them, though.
They're desperately in need of work.
Yeah.
Any further comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Diary?
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes?
There was one more item from the Mile Zero Cruisers. Request for
Oh, yes.
street signs and street
cleaning.
My apologies. That's correct. Request from the cruisers?
Yep.
Councillor Earl?
Move we approve their request.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And administration will work with them to facilitate that. Thank you, Brenda. Diary?
Nothing to update, Your Worship.
Consent calendar. We've got a couple of pieces. Motion to move, receive the consent.
So move.
Councillor Parslow, Councillor Blackstrom. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Strategic priorities? Nothing at this point, Duncan?
Nothing to update, Your Worship.
Media? Rob, anything? So a motion to recess to close, please. Councillor Parslow, Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we'll take a 7-minute break and recess to close.